Good evening, welcome. This is the Wareham Finance Committee, Wednesday, March 23rd, it's at 6:30 PM, and we're holding meetings regarding articles on the annual town meeting. Before we begin, may I ask the clerk to call the roll, please?
Sure. Tom Worthen, Jody Smith, Norma Scoggin, Scoggin, Dave
Let's see
Hurd,
you.
Vice Chair, Bernie Pigeon Chair, myself, Jerry Stefanski, and Matt Rose.
Thank you, and good evening. This afternoon, or the noontime, we had the pleasure of touring Upper Cape and also partaking of a very delicious meal prepared by the students, their culinary department. It was very eye-opening for me. I was amazed at the facility he has there and envious, really, considering what we pay them for funds and tax dollars and what he accomplishes with those funds. If anyone else wants to make comment that was there today, you're welcome to do so. Jody?
Well, that's what I was going to speak to. I mean, it was a great tour of the school. I mean, it's a school they should really be proud of. And my grandson did, go to school there. But the one thing that bothers me, and since I've been in Wareham, the few years I've been here, and I've heard different rumors and stuff, is the lack of access the Wareham kids have to Upper Cape Tech. They don't get the support from our administration, and I think we're doing the kids in this town a real disservice by not providing them more information as to what they provide at Upper Cape Tech, because it's a lot more than automotive and plumbing. I mean, it's unbelievable how many different shops they have there and different things, but it's just, I really, and this is something, not much I can say about it now, and I know there's a new superintendent coming in at some point, but I think the school department needs to give Upper Cape a little bit more love, because it's a great source. It was unbelievable the tour we had today. I learned a lot, and I've been through that school before. It just keeps improving and getting better.
And we give them football players and basketball players. The reason it doesn't get the exposure is because they just take too many kids out of the school. 235 kids going over there.
Anyone else want to make comment that was there?
That's the reason.
But and I've said this.
Let the kids find out for themselves, among themselves, if that's what they want to do.
But
I mean,
make them aware what's out there.
We're not marketing that school to the Wareham students, if that's what you want us to do.
And that's absolutely what we should be doing, to be fair to these kids.
We support it that way. Any other comments anyone want to make?
I was surprised to find that they have such courses as nursing. They also have a veterinarian school, which is quite impressive. When we were there, they were taking care of a puppy, but they in the vet school, they have x-ray machines, which really surprised me.
A surgical suite.
A little surgical suite there. They also do hairdressing and nails and cosmetics. So it's a very diversified curriculum that they have. As we said, it's not just automotive and plumbing and heating and ventilating.
The most important asset that we have, that they don't market in town, is the adult schools.
Yes,
There's a lot of good adult courses over there.
yes.
They
Matt,
have
you wanna
electronics too, new fields, don't they as well?
IT, yes.
Yes.
Environmental
Yes.
environmental programs.
Horticulture.
We do a lot with the co-op, so we do, the town of Wareham does a lot with the sewer department, co-op program with the kids from that school. We get them for 2 years. We've had one student go through that program, then into Mass Maritime, kept him there as a co-op, and then he went on to his field. And these are opportunities that I think our kids should be aware of. Now, what they choose is on them. But if you give good information, you have an opportunity to make a better choice. That's all. If you don't know of something, you can't make that choice. That's
Correct.
all it is. So how can you make a choice with limited information? That's all.
Matt, you want to say?
Sorry about that.
Oh, very good.
I don't have much to say on it. I thought the tour was really, really good. The school is definitely worth its time. and you are right, we do need to push it on the, well, not push it, but let the students be able to see it, a little bit more exposure. We're paying the town, paying them for every student that goes over there just as much as we're paying our own schools for it, so why not use it?
I was surprised they are up to date. I mean, it's not like they have something over here that's been 8, 9 years old. They are up to date, current with everything. They built their own electric car. They just keep on going in the other facilities. Nothing's old. It's all kept up to date. The maintenance of the building, it looked like it was only 20 years old, not 50. And of course, they do it all themselves, and that's pride that they take in their work. Very, very impressive, very, very impressed.
And Mr. Chairman, one final thing on that, they do have honors programs, so children there can go to college. So the concept that if you go to Upper Cape, you can't continue on to get a college education is false. They've got great programs for children that want to go on to
Oh,
college.
indeed. They have a National Honor Society over there that's the same as ours. Everybody else is around the country. And they have a number of students involved in it.
They have AP classes and
That's right.
such, but their main focus is the trades.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Roger will say that is their focus. But
But they do provide the other.
if the student wants to choose to go beyond, they're prepared for it.
Absolutely.
Okay, we'll move on to the petitioned articles for the annual town meeting. First one is Article 19, and Ellie, you have the floor.
Thank you.
Annie, excuse me, I apologize. I called you.
Annie Hayes, yeah. I don't know if you folks have seen the pilot, the pilots that we get from solar. Have you seen those?
Yes.
You have, you know
We-
the
we-
amounts.
We
Okay, you formed them?
see them all, yes.
Oh, okay, good. All right. This takes a little bit, but probably maybe 10. So, because I think a moratorium is a difficult decision, and just going on the floor, I'm gonna have to figure out how to propose it or present it more to the town before whatever time is allotted. It's not really enough perhaps to think it through. First, a moratorium does not mean to obstruct the new solar bylaw articles submitted by the Solar Committee, but to allow a continuance for creating the right right bylaw. I do not believe, as written, that solar bylaw will be approved by the AG because it has a similar flaw of capping generation at a specific megawatt. The one that was just disapproved had a cap at acreage. The AG said the exception to solar anywhere except to protect health, safety, and welfare was not justified by this limitation on size, the one that was recently disapproved. I do not feel that going from a 10-acre limit of our now disapproved solar bylaw to a 5-megawatt utility using 25 acres to build is justified either. People need to be educated and weigh in what to fight for. This is not easy. The Mass Law 40A, Section 3, Paragraph 9, that regulates large-scale industrial solar, says, no zoning ordinance or bylaw shall prohibit or unreasonably regulate the installation of solar energy or building of structures that facilitate the collection of solar energy, except where necessary to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. We have lived by this vague law for 35 years and have been threatened by solar developers who see in Wareham cheap land, a vague state law, weak bylaws from days of tiny solar arrays, and fear of the deep pocket lawsuits that large utilities have. In addition, the county road solar developer Entero from Texas said around 2015, when Governor Baker called out the SMART subsidies, a bell rang out internationally that Massachusetts was the lucrative hotspot for solar, despite its northerly latitude disadvantage. So we have arrays that are being built by people from Utah, South Carolina, Texas, and internationally. I went to the arsenic poles in Carver, you know, the ones that are stuck in, and everyone spoke French. They couldn't the workers, they couldn't answer my questions. They were laborers from France. It's really interesting. In the past, we have felt protective by the Department of Energy Resources guidance documents to the general law that I just read. And their guidance says that DOR strongly discourages designating locations for utility-scale solar that require significant tree cutting because of the important water management and cooling benefits trees have. DOR encourages, quote, designating locations in industrial and commercial districts or on vacant disturbed land. Well, we know in Wareham, the majority of arrays are on clear-cut, uprooted forests. They are not on previously disturbed land. And that's because there's no legal weight to this advice from the DOER, and towns across the state are up in arms at the destruction of the environment in which they exist, the natural world. They are similarly often poor with wealth in their natural land. And then Article 97 of the Mass Constitution, which is rarely cited, says, "The people shall have the right to clean air and water, freedom from excessive noise, and the natural, scenic, historic, and aesthetic qualities of their environment, and the utilization of the agriculture, forest, water, air, and other natural resources is hereby declared to be a public purpose." And what does that matter to a solar developer? The AG just said, your solar regulations must not hinge on the phrase to protect health, safety, and welfare, but on substantive evidence. And that was not there. It was very weak in the last bylaw. And I think Nancy is strengthening this bylaw's language as we speak, but it's going to be hard to pull it over the AG line. Last March, I grabbed mittens and a clipboard petition for a new solar bylaw for the signatures standing outside the PO in West Wareham. People virtually grabbed the board to sign. Solar loathing was expressed over and over. Toby Road, Farmer to Market Road, sand pits, deforestation, wherever you go. Green energy, it's not, it's destroying our environment. I'm from Middleborough, Lakeville, I can't sign, but it's happening there too. I hate it, it's gotta stop. And the electric bill just goes up. People are angry that they know there's a better way and are being force-fed a destructive way, making the necessity of solar harder and harder to develop. This is the summary of centralized energy. Solar is accessible to us all, but we end up paying a central utility, our taxpayer dollars, to subsidize a solar utility to deforest our neighborhoods. Then we buy the electricity whose delivery charge, because from a distance, costs more than generation. And our bills go up. I just noticed in January the delivery cost was raised 20%, just stated right out, but seemingly does not include Governor Baker's doubling of solar megawatts for the SMART program. I don't know if you know that, but the megawatts have just been doubled. We are going to have twice as much, and Wareham is going to be a site again where people want to develop. He asked separately from the utilities that they deliver a plan for ratepayers paying for that doubling megawatt solar developments. Along with the carbon dioxide in our atmosphere, our use of electricity continues to rise as the window of time to prevent climate catastrophe continues to shut.
Annie, could I ask you to narrow your address to your petition, please?
I am. This is why the moratorium is necessary, because the language, the situation is complicated. There's so many aspects to it. And the language has got to be so precise that it's a very narrow framework in which it's going to be accepted, is what we're seeing now from the AG, and then we're going to get the Supreme Judicial Court's adjudication before August. And that's why it's very difficult to write one now, pass it at town meeting, and then possibly just be in the same situation. So I wouldn't call for a moratorium otherwise.
Now, have you seen other communities who attempted the same
Yes.
issue, and how successful have they been?
Well, they in spending a year's time, and it doesn't have to be a year's time, but usually it's to the next town meeting, annual town meeting. In spending that time, they open the conversation up to a lot more participation. And they find that it's difficult at first. I mean, it's been difficult for this committee, but it's difficult at first. But then as people communicate, it's really a communication time. As they communicate, there's more trust that's developed and more is expressed and more is understood. It's an educational process for the community. And then the bylaw is written that they know will pass because they have the proper information and time to develop it.
Well, how successful have other moratoriums been? My question is, in other communities?
Passing. Some, like Amherst just went against it. I think it was, I don't know if it was a 3-2 vote. It was a narrow vote by one. But a town, Petersham, that has the Wareham District Attorney General as one of the is it the planning board? Not the planning board. I forget what board it was, but that voted against it. They had to have a majority. She voted against it for an excellent document of reasons. And because she's a district attorney, it seemed like she really had the language that was necessary.
Voted against what? Voted against the moratorium?
No, voted for, voted for the moratorium, but it was in a convoluted disapproving the acceptance of the bylaw. Okay, sorry, yeah.
But it was-
Okay.
Have the bylaws been accepted by the Attorney General? If a bylaw comes out for a moratorium,
Yes, they have been accepted.
the Attorney General has accepted
Yes.
moratoriums just for a year or
They
multiple
have
years?
to have a sunset clause, and people who write moratoriums don't invent the wheel. You know, they go back to the records and see who has one and who's had it passed. I've talked to people who have gone through the whole process, and it's a difficult process, but it's a really good process for the community. I think this is such an important issue for the future.
Could you
And
give
yet-
us some towns, some communities that have the moratorium?
I'm not, I haven't got them at the tip. I know that Wendell is one, Shutesbury is in, I know that Amherst turned it down, the moratorium. I can get you a list, though.
The AG's
No,
opinion
go ahead.
did say
Amherst
specifically,
did, by one vote, yes.
the AG's opinion did specifically say a moratorium is the way to go.
Yes.
That's the way I read it anyway.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
Good for, well, thank you for that. I have read it once, and honed in on the disapproval language, but yeah, I think so. And I've talked to Nancy, I've talked to people who are, I really am not oppositional. It's an option, and I think it's a decent one for the community to think about.
Jody, you want to say?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea, and I'm certainly going to support it. What scares me, though, when the last one passed, is we had a flood of applications.
I know. We're gonna have them anyway because there's the Wild West now. And that's very scary to all of us. And what we hoped to God we wouldn't have to go through that again.
Yeah, that's the only thing that scares me. I mean, how much word of this is out there? Once it gets out there,
Well,
all of a sudden the town gets flooded with applications.
this is recorded, so here we are. And I don't believe that the big players don't watch that all the time. When they know that there's a new solar bill coming up, they're just like we are, waiting for it to arrive and then doing what they do as opposed to what we do. In the first tranche that we just had, 1,400 more acres. One of them was Faring Hill, and I have an old farm that I bought to conserve land just for the wildlife and the forest. And right up to my land is Joe Cresby's Forest Hill that's up for a 22 acre solar project. And on narrow Faring Hill Road is going to be really, really tough. Thousands and thousands of truckloads. It's going to be, tough. It's tough.
The only weak point I find in your request is that you describe the temporary moratorium on large scale. And again, after the photovoltaic installations, again refer to large scale. You're specifying a particular size,
Yeah.
and you don't define the size as a cutoff or, and
I
that's the
said
only
it
weak
was,
point, I think.
did I not say it was in excess of 250 kilowatts? That's the old definition of large scale. When the law was built, that's how archaic it is. And in my comment that comes with later in the article, in the document there, I say that, you know, we're up to 10 megawatts. I've seen, on the spreadsheet, there's a 20 DC megawatt. I don't know how that translates.
You make a reference to a minimum plate capacity.
Yeah, well, that's what it was. When the law was written in 2000, whatever it was, 35 years ago, that I read, that's so vague. After 250, you had a large-scale solar. So that's why I wrote that. But that's the reason, that's one reason why we're stopping at that point, so that the whole law, the whole concept of community bylaw is redesigned for us.
Dominic, you?
Yeah, I just want to put my 2 cents in. You stated, what people don't realize is you can't put a solar field anywhere. It has to be near high tension lines. It has to be able to go to electricity. So even if there's so many applications, there's only so many spots that it can be put into town. And a lot of those spots are, you say that, you know, it ruins the forest. A lot of those spots are on cranberry bogs or older cranberry bogs. The cranberry industry around here isn't what it used to be. And a lot of these people, you know, want to do these, you know,
Dual use.
yeah, you know, use it on the cranberry bogs out where you would never see them, and they're near the high tension lines anyways, which they have to be. And the other thing you stated was, you said that the electric bill keeps going up. Well, don't you think if there was more solar, the electric bill would go down? You're preventing the general public from basically trying to save money on electricity.
No, I'm not, but
Well-
let me explain. There are two
ahead.
issues. Dual solar is one, and everybody thinks it's a good idea, and it may be able to be worked out eventually. But the way we've seen it develop, our understanding of it, and I've gone out into fields with DEP, is that we've got an aqua source under that wetland. And there's no other wetland where we let, you know, intrusion. But the cranberry bogs, if it's a wet bog, now if it's upland or it's a dry bog, that's another situation, and there have been applications, but there's one that's on appeal because the forest protective zone along the Weweantic was clear cut. And you don't, you don't break the bylaws that the Conservation Committee sets to do dual use. So that has to be done. The other thing is, I have 3 solar developments that I have set up. One is on a historic district in New Bedford, in this historic building I own. One is on a Civil War house in Marion, and one is across the barn in my house at my farm. And every month I get no payment necessary. And that's the best feeling. And what's great about it is that, I mean, I'm very frugal, but I look at that bill all the time, and I know what I'm using. I know what my credit is. I know what it's going for. There's immediate feedback for a person conserving. Right now, conservation is not a word. Have you heard conservation recently? Except for the Conservation Commission? People think that they hate solar, but they think solar's taking care of it somehow. You know, our that's what I said, the CO2's going up, our carbon emissions are going up. So, but we have a,
But the alternative to solar has more pollution than solar.
we have new technologies all the time. Panels are getting smaller with more megawatts, that's one thing.
Yeah.
So we need to be able to adjust our bylaws. There's a lot going on. There's geothermal that is much better because you start at 55 degrees instead of trying to do heat pumps.
But you're talking about, you know, solar on, you know, private residence. Not a lot of people can afford that or get that done, so then they have to rely on larger, you know, to lower their bill. And I just think that the alternative to that is more pollution than a solar field. So.
Well, one of the things is the
Coal.
What about the subsidies going to homeowners? They're trying to
and
obstruct
I want that, and I
do
believe
too.
in that.
Yeah.
But it's not as easily done for a lot of people.
None of it's easy.
Okay.
None of
I'm
it's
just, I'm
easy.
just saying that's.
Deforestation isn't easy, is it?
um,
It's not easy.
Whatever. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Just Really simple, just to simplify this down a little bit, you're not asking to stop solar altogether in the town of Wareham. You're just looking to put a pause on it until bylaws can be written to
That are
control.
accepted, and that give
The bill.
us some autonomy. I mean, the court case that's being heard by the Supreme Judicial Court is where a developer wants to just walk right over the abutting town's right to regulate solar and not have it in a residential zone.
So the article,
That's what it's about.
the article we're looking at isn't about whether or not solar is good or bad or anything.
It's
just a
good.
manner of
It's good, Matt.
stopping them from building until we can put in the laws that we need in town.
Exactly.
It's a pause.
It's
And
a
the right
pause.
to put
Correct.
in reasonable,
pause.
reasonable
It's a
regulation.
necessary term of a pause, not a hustle to get into the next bylaw. This solar committee wasn't really able to start until September. That was their first meeting. And I, for one, wanted to be on it, but I had signed up for an appeal with Mass EPA, so the Board of Select Persons said that I couldn't be on that. So it was rough getting a group of people, and I don't know how representative they felt even it was. But anyway, they had a hustle of, 5 months to get this thing together.
And I think that's what the focus needs to be on, the fact that it is a pause. It's not about what's good
Yes.
or bad with it, but it's just that we're gonna put a hold on this until we can set it up so that we can do it properly.
Right. And it's a
And I think that's what
continuum.
the focus needs to be.
I
on
think
the
you're
article.
right. I'll write that word down, Matt. But I think also seeing it as a continuum. I can imagine taking the solar bylaw that the committee wrote and starting there with the AG information, the Supreme Judicial Court ruling, and working from there. That seems very reasonable to me.
And that'll be something that the solar bylaw committee will bring up at a
Yes.
future town meeting. But right now, for this particular town meeting, it's just a matter of putting a hold on it and
Right,
not about what the bylaws are gonna be.
exactly.
And the hold is for how long?
Well, it says,
June 30th, 2023 is how it's written.
or the next
Spring.
spring meeting.
So it's basically one
It's
year.
basically a year, but it'll take a while to get organized, and so you're down to, and the Supreme Judicial Court isn't until August. So we won't have that piece until August.
And do we have to wait for the AG to say the moratorium's okay?
Well, the moratorium will be pending, the new solar bylaw, if it passes, everything's pending. But as soon as it's pending, as soon as it's voted on, then the freeze for no bylaw stops. Okay?
And did you have anything?
Yeah, and this is a moratorium on 250 kilowatt above acreage. Like, how many acres would that be? You're trying to put a moratorium on?
No, I haven't gone into acres or megawatts. I'm just saying we're looking at what used to be defined as
I know, but
large-scale
if this
solar.
passes, then what you're doing is you're putting it on the acreage that's required for 250. So is that 1 acre, or is it 5 acres, or?
The bylaw would determine what was the category for large solar now. 250
It-
may not
right,
be.
I'm trying to take
Okay.
that 250 and put it into acreage.
4 megawatts, I know Faring Hill very well, is 22 acres, which includes buffer zones, setbacks, access road, all fenced in.
So then that's
That's
megawatt,
about 5 acres per megawatt needed.
megawatt, and a megawatt is 1,000 kilowatts.
That's right.
So this is a quarter.
So it's one, so
One
it's
quarter.
1/4. And so if Fearing is how many you said?
4
megawatt?
megawatts, 4.4, yeah.
So and it's how many acres?
22,
So 1/4 of 22 is
5-ish.
5. So this is what you're saying, roughly 5 acres. You can't have it, if it's over 5 acres, it don't go. It's on the moratorium.
That would be
But
smaller than
roughly,
that.
right?
It would be
They-
smaller than
Yeah,
that.
they just can't pull the permit for it until the bylaw,
There's a moratorium on
5 acres.
5
There's
acres.
a moratorium,
It's smaller
no,
than that.
on anything that's over 250 kilowatts.
Which would take at least 5 acres.
Not the 250 kilowatts.
No, it's more like,
That's a
It's
quarter of a
it's less
watt,
than
a
2
megawatt.
acres.
That's a quarter of a
It's-
megawatt.
it's less than 2 acres.
Less than, Okay, so
That's the-
see, that, just help me here with math.
Sure.
How many acres are we
Okay,
talking about?
if 1 megawatt is about 5 acres, dividing 20 by 4 for Faring Hill,
Yeah.
5 megawatts, sorry, 5 acres, 1 megawatt. 250 is a quarter of that. A quarter of 5 is 1.3 or 4 or something.
1.25.
1 and a quarter. Thank you, precisely.
So we're saying one and a
Right.
quarter acres.
So
Okay.
it's too small to be financially
That's-
worth doing.
That's just the old
So nothing
definition.
will happen then,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Well, the bylaw
Zero.
was made.
Right.
So this is what this is saying.
It's a hold.
Moratorium is on everything.
It's
It
a
gives,
hold.
it gives us time.
Not on anything
right.
that's behind the meter. That means anything that's
I know, but if this passes, basically a moratorium on
large.
something defined as large as, now, it's large as over an acre.
Yeah,
Yeah.
talking industrial versus residential.
But if it's an ancillary setup on ground for your business, for your home, 250 kilowatts.
No, I was just trying to
Thank you. Sorry, it was
translate
complicated.
it to something I could understand.
Yeah, I'm glad. Me too.
The other part of this, we should educate as many people as he can, is what solar was 5 years ago, what it is today, and what they're projecting it will be 5 years from now, because it's a very dynamic field in terms of the cost and the production of a given square meter
Yes.
or whatever.
Yes. And these really are dinosaurs. The ones we see now are probably dinosaurs. In just a few years, we'll look back and think, why did we destroy forests?
But people
For that.
people don't know that. I mean, walking around the street, they just think solar is whatever it is.
Well, because they're reacting to the deforestation.
That's right. They think it's their the little light that goes on when they walk down
Their landscape lights.
Yeah.
Very good, thank you, Andy. There's one problem before you leave, however. Your petition has a statement on it. Now, we're looking at a printed page in which you have a date of June 30th, 23. That statement is not on the petition that all the signatures are on.
Right.
So that's definitely a conflict.
Well, I
You
have
couldn't
to ask,
present that on the floor of town meeting unless you amended what was on the document that they signed.
right. And I've put a call into Claire, I understand that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I just want you aware of that.
I am aware.
Good.
Yeah. But the education will go on regardless if this is not passed. It has to.
I did, I just
Thanks for your effort.
Yeah.
making you aware of those issues, and maybe you can solve them so you can get to the floor of town meeting and not go through.
Yeah, thank you, Bernie. If you have any ideas I haven't thought of, let me know.
Okay, thank you, Annie.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, Article 23, which is asking the town meeting to act favorably on the steering committee report.
So Jared Frederickson and I are gonna talk about 23 and 24, if you don't mind, if we'll just come up together and however you'd like to do it. I mean, they're.
Oh, indeed,
intertwined, so-
yes, they're partner, I understand. That's not an issue. My question though is, are you representing the steering committee?
No,
No.
neither of us are members of the steering committee.
Correct.
Go forward, we'll let you have.
Yeah, I mean, just to introduce ourselves, so I'm Leslie Edwards Davis. I've been working on this idea for a community center, a multi-generational community center at Deacon's for a year now, as has Jared. Jared, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Jared Frederickson. I've also been I've been involved with that as well. She brought me on board a few months after, but I've been working on this since August. We both took part in passing Article 20 back at the fall town meeting. And thank you for that. And that's about it, I guess.
So Jared's going to speak to Article 23, and I'll take 24.
Sure thing. So Article 23, it is essentially to have the steering committee provide a report going into the Springtown meeting on their findings on the Deacon's property, as was originally outlined in Article 20 back in the fall. Let's see. So Okay, so from what we understand, they made considerable progress on their goal over there at the steering committee so far. And we think hearing an update on that progress is essential for the future of this project and of the development of a Deacon's Community Center in the future. I would also like to emphasize that, we've heard this a little bit, but this article would not sunset the steering committee, nor would it do anything that is not in keeping with the Article 20 from last fall. That's pretty much all it does, but.
If it's presenting a report as
Yep.
required under the article of last October, aren't they satisfying the conditions of that article?
Well, it is listed on the town website, and when the members of the steering committee were sworn in as members of the steering committee, that their term was through the fall town meeting. So that steering committee will continue to exist and be able to do work up until the fall town meeting as well.
And if that article requires them to submit a report,
Before
what
the fall
are
town meeting.
you attempting to do and to see if they act favorably on the steering committee report?
Correct.
So you're acting this town meeting to act favorably on a report that they haven't received yet until next October.
I do believe we are hearing the report in this, is part of it as well.
Right, that's part of the
There's
article.
also in there
Article
too.
on the warrant to hear reports.
hear
Correct,
a
to
report.
hear the
Yes,
report.
yes,
Yes.
and they may choose to do so. That's their option.
Correct, that's part of the article here as well, is to hear the report.
Excuse me for having an awful lot of conflict here, trying to understand what's going on.
I get it.
Okay,
We have charged a committee
yes.
Correct.
that has been appointed to create a report,
Yes.
present to the town meeting in October.
Before October.
It says by.
Well,
Yes, it's,
by that town meeting.
it's listed
So I don't
here.
understand the purpose of your articles.
The purpose is to hear a report from the committee. I think the
Correct.
difference is a report versus the report. We're asking for a report from the committee on their findings.
An update on what they've
Correct.
done
You
so
could
far.
you could use the word update. You could definitely
And you
use
want
that
them to
word.
do it at the meeting, at the Springtown meeting?
At the Springtown meeting.
Yes,
So we would vote at the meeting, and then they would need to stand up and present something.
They're also on Article 5, so some of this has happened after we submitted our citizens petition, because the problem is the committee has a lot on their plate, and they're trying to get their sea legs, and they're establishing who's the clerk and who's the chair and how the process works and what they need to look at, and they did not realize they needed to ask to be on the agenda for town meeting. And so in the absence of that, we wanted to make sure that we could hear something from this committee on the floor of Springtown meeting.
Do we need that, since they now do have something?
Well, I can't withdraw it now that it's on the warrant. If they make their report under Article 5, I'm happy when it comes to 23 to withdraw it.
So they could actually refuse. They have the power to refuse to give a report to this town meeting.
Under Article 5,
It doesn't say they specifically have to at that particular, they're required to by October town meeting.
so this is a new warrant article
I
that is
understand.
asking for a report. If I don't withdraw it, I'm asking the body to vote on the committee giving a report. So if the body votes favorably, they would give a report. And just as a side note, the steering committee wants to report to the body. This is not us trying to do something around the steering committee. They want
Correct.
to make a report.
Questions, concerns?
Well, if they do give the report, you just withdraw your article.
Absolutely.
Correct.
There's no point in having it otherwise.
yeah.
But if they decide they don't want to give a report,
Then the town's gonna vote, then the town will vote on that article to make them or not make them.
Right.
and does this article have to go before the Attorney General before it becomes law?
It doesn't change a bylaw. It's just asking for a committee to make a report.
Is this an interim report? Is that what you would describe it as?
I think that's up to the committee. I don't
It-
know whether the committee is making a
But you said they
preliminary.
were, they
I
were
want
just
them
getting
to
their sea legs
report.
under them and they,
When it
plan
was
on it.
time to submit, warrant articles by the deadline.
They've
They did
since-
not know the process of requesting themselves to be placed on the agenda.
Yes,
so, but in the fall, we will get an up or no on the report, whether to go ahead with it or not go ahead with it.
right?
So the fall is the deadline for the report, according to what we voted on in fall twenty
Oh,
twenty-one.
so you're saying
It
the
says
report may
by.
be 6 months
It can
old?
be any
It says
time.
by fall 2022.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I think we have to rely on the committee to assess what stage their report is in.
Yes, if this article simply asks them to provide an update at the Springtown meeting. They are free to continue working after that. Their term lasts through the Fall Town meeting. So moving into the Fall Town meeting, they are still free to create another report, a more finalized report, whatever they feel is necessary.
I think you may misunderstand something. In the Article 5 occasional reports, I quote, "To receive and hear reports regarding the redevelopment authority or any other reports from committees who deem it necessary or to do or act in any other manner relative thereto." So if they should deem it necessary, they could give a report.
They've asked to be placed under Article 5 to give a report.
Then that's regarding Claire, the moderator.
Correct.
That happened after
This was introduced before
Well,
that.
before or after, the fact is, they still could have at any time give a report under Article 5. They
did
didn't
not-
have to be
they did
required
not
to do
know
so.
that.
They were not aware of that at the time, or the members of the committee did not know
They
that.
weren't required to do
Sounds
so by the
So
close
we-
of the warrant either.
Correct, so we put this one in simply as a precaution, but they are now aware of that and will likely do it under Article 5.
They already,
And
they already
yes,
have.
they will do it under Article 5, and if that is the case, then this one can be withdrawn on the floor.
Jerry, you have a comment?
The article is 7 lines. Can you explain to me line 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, what that means?
I'm looking at the article.
Because I can read it, let me read it. It says, blah, blah, about the access to building, assist the town preparing the building for occupancy and
Oh.
moving a council on age.
That's the next article, sorry, we haven't presented that one yet.
All right.
That's 24.
You're on 20, okay, well, you
Okay,
can
we
move
have
them
'em-
together.
the
So
direction.
23.
Oh, I was
We have-
told
we
the
have that one
report
as
was
20.
23.
Oh.
Okay,
So-
my apologies.
That's okay.
So the
It don't
report
matter,
is
yeah.
24.
Yeah.
Okay,
So that,
all
okay,
right, the
that's what
report.
I had
So
written down, I don't know
maybe
if you have
So
something different
we're
on
doing
yours.
it in the reverse order then,
Okay, I guess we're
because
doing
we were
these
told the
backwards, it's on
report was
us.
24, and so,
It's the one with
Yeah.
7 lines, whichever one I'm
thanks,
talking.
that's the one I'm gonna
Yeah,
present.
so yeah, so
Okay.
this is,
So that's,
so that
So-
was 24 that
that's
we just.
24,
Okay.
I'll do
Okay.
23.
I guess we had 'em- I guess we had 'em
Explain to me
backwards
the
here, I
last
guess.
5 lines, I don't understand what you're asking for.
So they have them flipped, so 24.
No, 23 is this, 24 is the Degas Steering Committee report.
To hear the report.
And it says articles to see if the town will hear the report of the Degas Steering Committee.
Right, we thought that was
Right,
23.
okay.
We had
That's
them
the one they were
reversed,
just
sorry about that.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, so we were talking about 24 the whole time.
yes. I can move on to 23 if you're ready. Or we can finish,
They're very well related, so we'll take.
I mean,
I know, it's,
the 24 just seems, it seems like a move, like it's on.
Well, that's what we were
Yeah.
concerned with initially at the 24 with sunset 'em.
but it doesn't because their terms are through
Correct.
October 2022. That's what they were sworn in for. We are not trying to shut them down. We're trying to give them a voice, which may have been, you're suggesting now they could have just asserted that under Article 5. We're all learning this process.
Any other concerns, gentlemen? Norma? I think we're confused as to the effect this is gonna have on them.
I'm not sure where the confusion lies.
I am uncomfortable that a petitioned article has the intent of forcing a committee appointed by the town meeting to do something they are either unprepared to do or may not be able to do. And let's say I'm talking in general terms, but specifically with this committee, they've been formed, they've only had about 4 or 5 meetings, and so they're trying to put things together, and I think it's inappropriate to ask them to be prepared to do something that they're struggling to understand themselves.
Would it change your mind if they voted to support it, which is what they're planning to
They
take
can
a
communicate with me
vote
as
to do?
such, but this committee is not aware of anything that,
Right, it hasn't happened yet. What I would
oh,
recommend
it hasn't
then,
happened yet to vote?
no, because they
7%?
missed a meeting last week.
Yes.
What I would offer then is maybe a pause on voting on that one until you are able to hear from the committee, because I do think that that might change your mind.
Well, it also secondly disturbs with the exception of, well, I think there's one exception I'm aware of. I know the signatures on either one of these petitions are from the steering committee itself.
That was purely by who we could get on the spur of the moment to sign by the deadline. That is not, should not be taken as a meaningful omission. Again, we are not here to go around the steering committee. We know all of them. We've worked with all of them on this project for a year. We watch their meetings. We see them as people who have a similar goal in trying to figure out if this is workable. We're not trying to do an end run over them, and they don't see it that way.
Jody?
Yeah, I was totally caught off guard seeing these. I didn't think we were gonna see anything until October. And when I saw these, I said, boy, where did these come from? And I was under the impression too, once the report was given and all, the committee would be sunset. I mean, that, their work is done per se. I'm not saying it is or not, but I was just totally surprised by seeing these. Cause I thought October was the kind of let's get this out on the floor, let's get it done up or down, however it may go. And to see these now, it was very surprising.
So I think there's a few points. Number one, the article we passed last fall always said by fall town meeting, never at fall town meeting, because we wanted to give them a chance to determine their own destiny as a committee. Their concerns are that there are people who are looking at renting space in this, which are critical to making it a successful project, who have businesses to make decisions about, and they can't wait 2 more years for this to happen. We'll have to go back and get all new businesses for you and all new letters of intent. So what they're saying is they want to be able to tell those businesses there will be RFPs put out that you can respond to, and you can tell the town how much money you will give them, and so people can make a reasonable, educated decision about whether this is viable based on real numbers, real RFPs that have real responses. And we can't do that because none of that is provided for right now. I would be coming back to you just like in fall with numbers that are projections based on whatever we can pull together, instead of coming to you with, these are the RFPs that went out, these are the respondents, this is the number of classrooms they want to rent, this is the square footage, the amount per square footage you're going to bring in, this is why it's viable or not. And go ahead, sorry.
If I may really quickly, a lot of this hinges on the report from the DECA steering committee, which we haven't seen. Is this something we should be hearing before we hear the report?
Oh, very definitely. We heard nothing from the committee, and the process has been put in place for them to prepare a report and deliver such report at the fall town meeting, which occurs in October.
Correct, but I'm looking at the motion that we're entertaining right now for this town meeting, and it hinges on this report that they may give at the spring town meeting. So we don't have any information from that report to make a determination on the warrant articles themselves.
Well, I would just like to first clear up one thing. As it says in the original Article 20 from the fall, that it will make a recommendations no later than fall town meeting of 2020. I've mentioned that before, but I feel like that's important to emphasize. And what we would be hearing at spring town meeting would not necessarily be a final report from the committee, nor does this article say that at any point in it. It would be more in the purpose of an update to understand where the committee is, what information they have available, the progress they've made so far, and they would still have the ability to continue working and provide a more finalized report in the fall.
But the Article 24 is worded to see if the town will hear the report of the DECA steering committee.
Right, that's something on the 24.
It's the phraseology that counts. That'll sink you if you're not careful.
And even on Article 23, it's the same thing. I move the town act favorably on the report of the DECA steering committee and provide them with, but we haven't heard this report to decide whether or not the rest of the motion can go forward.
I think the logic that we're all stumbling on is the report could also be 2 reports. The report is the report of the group. Like, maybe it should have been a report, but I don't think the report means there's only one report.
Yeah.
It does not say final report.
Let me say
This is moving forward with the project based on their
No,
report.
it says to act favorably on their report. If their report is, we feel strongly that this is viable. We think the starting point is to put out RFPs in these areas, a early education and care program, a supportive education services program. If they make that report, then to act favorably on it is to put out those RFPs. You're right, the report, it depends on what their report is.
But you're asking that we approve the report before we even hear it.
I'm not asking you to approve the report.
We're asking to approve of hearing the report.
That's what town meeting would approve.
Correct.
They would approve the report.
You're saying town meeting to act favorably on the report.
Right, you're not
Yes.
approving the report, it would be town meeting.
I'm talking about town meeting,
And it would be presented.
even though we don't know what that's going to be yet.
Right, we're gonna vote
be
on
on
it
here.
on the floor after we've heard the report of the committee.
And in that instance, if the town votes it down, the whole thing goes away?
I think it depends on what the report asks. If the
Excuse me.
report says,
Collectively in this room, you got upwards of 100 years' experience dealing with town meetings.
okay,
Phraseology is very important, and in many cases, must be specific.
I understand.
And that's why this discussion is going on here.
I am not
Right now.
dismissing this
We're
discussion.
trying to tell
I'm
you
trying
these
to
things
understand
have
what
to
you're
be specific.
Correct.
And you're thinking in the context, but that's not what I meant. Of course, that isn't what you meant, but it's what is in there,
I think
and
it's
we are interpreting that
interpretation.
as we've interpreted other reports from town meeting.
Well, I would offer that town meeting language is not always as clear as you're making it out to be. Intent.
Well, that's why we had this discussion.
Intent is everything. Intent is everything, and we're trying to explain our intent. And when you go back and read, you and I know we've talked about me. I go back and read a lot of town meeting articles, and it's not. There's a lot of ambiguity in some of those things that we thought were clear. But the intent is twofold. To give the committee a voice to speak to Springtown meeting. Everyone is asking in town, what is happening with this? The only way to know is for the committee to speak.
And I don't believe any of us have a problem with that.
Right,
In
that's
fact,
not the
Article
problem.
5 permits it,
And now that
encourages
we,
it.
Yes.
and now that we know about Article 5 permitting it and encouraging it, and now that the steering committee knows that and they've asked to speak during that period, that will resolve Article 24. Once they speak, we will withdraw Article 24. It was only to give them a voice to speak.
And what happens if they decide not to speak?
I mean, they've told us they want to speak.
Yes,
I can only give you that information. I won't withdraw it, I guess. I mean, I would maintain the article. We would like to hear their thoughts.
We'd like to also. I mean, we
Right.
definitely would.
Yes.
Right,
Right,
right.
and I think that's an extremely important part right now, and I think that plays into the other article as well, being able to hear that report before we can make a decision
Right.
on anything else.
And of course-
I don't think we can honestly vote on this until we've heard.
We don't have enough information
Correct.
The other thing is that
from
we're
the
still
pertinent committee.
voting on articles based upon which one gets drawn first.
I know, yes, that is a thing but we can ask the body to table it until the prior article has been heard.
Yeah.
We could do that.
Well, we could just ask them ahead of time, are you going to report?
Motion to hear Article 5
Right.
reports.
Bernie, can I ask Claire?
Out of order.
No, is it?
Mr. Delmeyer has already reached out and asked to give a report under Article 5.
No, but what I'm saying, Claire, was, can the floor request not to have their article heard till another article is heard? In other words, don't hear 24 until 5 is heard? Is that something you have, is that something within the moderator's power?
It is.
It is, thank you.
I would be happy to make that request.
I would also caution you, you've remarked about you checked previous warrants and the articles are ambiguous that you've read. The articles are very specifically written so that when we finally get to the final article, and that is the motion I read. So you refer to the motion, you'll find that they are very specific as to the wording.
Not always.
No, not always, but for a purpose. But the motions I read, that the floor
I know.
votes on, that's the particular
I
one, that's
do. I
specific
understand that.
language. The ones in the warrants that we write are ambiguous, deliberately missed so, because we haven't got to the budget yet. And so if we tell what is in the budget now, we may change our mind by then, but we have to read what's on the warrant. I can read the motions.
I understand, and I
But,
know
you
you
know,
and
it's a-
I have
it's a
gone back and forth
misunderstanding
about that.
that
It's not a
people-
misunderstanding though, because there are articles that don't get changed from the warrant to the vote, and that have language that is open to interpretation. I just don't think
Agreed.
that.
I don't disagree with you.
Okay,
I don't, I
thank you.
just want you to know that the motions
Yes,
are very specific, and you could misinterpret one for the other.
I understand.
But also petition articles, you can't change them.
No, that's one thing you can't.
Um,
Has to be read from the floor exactly as, that's why I mentioned to Annie, because the written petition with all the signatures does not have the date of June 30th on it.
well, I mean, in the fall 21 town meeting, we did amend the motion before.
You can amend, of course.
Yes. Right,
But what's in the petition has to be read into the record.
that's fine. Maybe we could change gears and talk about 2023, just so that, since we've been on 24 for quite a while. So there's basically 4 components to Article 23. I want to focus on the RFP component first, because I think we have new information to give you, and we just want to make sure you're as up to date as possible. I am short one packet, so I'm hoping.
You can pass mine around if you want.
Yeah, I might need yours
that's
unless
alright.
you need it.
No, I'm good.
I'm gonna send 5 this way. Do I have that right? Yeah, they're just collated that way without staples. And
If you need to.
we can send 4 this way. Okay, so the first part I want to focus on is the RFPs, which I think is the key to the realm when we're talking about this concept of the multi-generational community center. When we came to your committee in fall, you rightly so poked at our budget and said this doesn't pass muster. And what we have done is gone back.
Can I have the extra? I'll use it for the, thank you.
So you poked at our budget, you poked holes in it. I really appreciated the rigor with which you looked at it. And we went back and we said, okay, how can we come back with the best numbers for this finance committee to look at? And we looked at 2 things. Number 1, we need letters of intent that get to you, that show the interest. And number 2, we need RFPs to go out, and we need respondents to address those RFPs and tell you that they want to rent this space. Again, give a dollar amount, give square footage, number of classrooms, and then you will know whether it's viable or not. It's really the key to this whole thing. It's not viable if no one wants to rent that space, because the whole premise of the whole funding model is leasing the space to education-related organizations, nonprofits, groups that have like-minded missions. So what I've got in this packet for you is a couple of things. Number 1 is a very preliminary, totally up for editing vision of the layout of the building and how it could be used by groups that may want to rent space. And this, in this layout, you'll see on the left-hand side in yellow is kind of one of our anchor groups that we've talked about for a while, which is an early education and care provider who would take up several classrooms along that left-hand side. We have 2 letters of interest in that packet that I just gave you. One from South Shore Community Action, Head Start. They've been with us since fall 2021. They want up to 6 classrooms. They have room that they'd like to expand beyond that. They want to bring after-school
Excuse me, let me
programs.
interrupt you a moment, please. Leslie, who are you representing in presenting this?
Myself, as the proponent. I
And,
drafted all of this before the steering committee ever existed.
and do you have a name, business, 501c3 account or anything?
We have an informal group called Deacon's for Wareham. It's not a 501c3. I'm on the board of the Deacon's Community Center Foundation, so is Jared. That is in the process of receiving its final 501c3 exemption. But this is from me, the proponent. I drafted all of these the map and everything way back when, before Article 20 even passed last fall.
Isn't all of this supposed to be coming from the steering committee? That's the only legal entity we deal with.
I'm just giving you an update on the groups that have gone to the steering committee and told them that they are interested, the groups that went to the tour and said that they wanted space. I'm not bargaining with you, I'm just giving you an update. I'm not asking you to approve of any of this, I'm just letting you know the information that's out there.
All right, here's the question. Hey, Leslie, has this been shared with the
Yes.
committee?
Yes.
Okay, so you basically have given them the information that you have gotten for
Yes.
for their use.
Absolutely, and told the people to direct the information to them, but because they were initially in contact with me, they sent me things which I then gave to the committee.
I'm sorry to say, I don't feel the committee can do anything with this information. The steering committee is the responsible party to come before the committee to do so. It's an entity we can work with, the steering committee. You are an outside group with no contractual interaction or relationship with the town, and you're presenting this as an article on the warrant. Now, you're presenting this independently of the steering committee.
Yeah.
Okay, I think there's a big misunderstanding. I'm trying to give you an update on the macro picture of who's interested, what kind of space they're interested in. The article itself just asks that the town put out RFPs so that they can hear responses from organizations who want to rent space. I'm trying to explain why that question is important.
But you're an outside entity that is, as you just phrased, so the town, giving information so the town can put out RFPs for this.
This
Facility.
all has been given to the steering committee. Just because I was the person who originally approached people way back when in the fall does not mean that I have done anything untoward.
Then if you've presented this to the steering committee, why isn't the steering committee presenting it to us?
I don't know that the steering committee knows they should be presenting it to you. I am trying to explain Article 23, which is an article that has 4 parts, one of which is requesting that the town put out RFPs so that organizations can tell you they want to rent space in this building. So I've gone back in what we have to show you why this is a relevant question. It's a relevant question because we can't answer the budget numbers. We can't give you hard numbers. No one can give hard numbers until they establish who wants space.
But I thought we created the steering committee to do so.
The steering committee is looking at the feasibility of a community center. This is part of what they're looking at. All of it has been given to them.
They're looking at the feasibility of the Deacon's building, not
Yeah,
necessarily for one item, but for all of the
There's
above.
nothing wrong with this.
Well, I mean, there are some. I did the walkthrough at Deacon's.
Right, we've seen it
on our
ourselves.
behalf. And there's, I see your setup.
I mean, it's.
Do we know who's
it's-
going to repair the bathroom? The only
Yes,
bathroom
and
in the
So if I
And the Head Start
attend, yes, it's a great question. So Matt and I were on the tour. We heard from Dave Menard about some issues in the building, a couple of pipes leaking. We heard from Head Start about that first bathroom in the yellow outline. Definitely needs a little bit of work. It's got some rings that need to be replaced. It has some stalls that are rusty. So one piece of information that came from the steering committee meeting, I think 2 weeks ago, is Head Start came and made a presentation to them. If you haven't seen it, it's really incredible. And they said they have federal dollars to bring to the table to put new bathrooms in, replace the bathrooms in their section, put in security, doors, cameras, everything they need. They bring with them that.
I still have an issue
I don't think
with
we
this
can.
before the committee. I'll poll my members, what you say? My opinion is it must be, the information she's attempting to present should be coming from the steering committee direct to us, because they're the only entity we can relate to. Dominic?
I mean, you can look at it that way, Bertie, but there's nothing preventing the petition article from going forward. She's asking as a petitioner for this to be looked at. Even though we have a steering committee, I don't believe that, you know,
Well, she's asking us to
it's-
put out RFPs.
I understand that. And that's not, I don't believe that's out of her,
Any
legal
other opinions?
request. Why would it be out of her legal request? It's not.
We don't have any legal relationship with this group.
No, but she's asking the town to do it. She's not
So-
asking herself to do it. She's asking the town to put out RFPs, which is,
Which
the
is
town
the-
does it all the time.
Yes, but the executive,
There's no final
Side
report
doesn't-
yet, so how do we even know we're not gonna sell it?
And-
So you're gonna get everybody with RFPs, you're gonna get everybody in the building, and then the final report's gonna say, not feasible for this, let's sell it.
I think we have a process that was put in place in the fall meeting,
yes.
and this is really not, this is stepping around the process. It's good, it's well intended, I don't think our intent is bad at all, but I just don't think it makes sense.
It's confusing it, unfortunately.
All your efforts are better served in being presented to the steering committee, who can make a decision to do so. They're the only ones that can relate with the executive branch, which is the administration. As far as RFPs are concerned, that decision is the executive branch, not the legislative branch. We got a legislative side,
Are you saying town meeting can't request that RFPs are put out?
correct.
Oh, I don't believe that.
I would beg to differ on that. I've
The
seen
only one who can
articles that
put them out,
request
put them
that.
out is a procurement officer,
Right,
who
there
by
are
charter
articles.
is Derek Sullivan.
There are articles that have requested the procurement officer to issue
He has the
RFPs.
finals to say on whether or not they go out.
This article just asks the same thing. It says, ask the town administrator to issue RFPs.
But how do we put out RFPs when we don't even know what we're gonna do with the money?
So, there is a article asking for a report, and then there's an article asking for other things. If the report is given and it says sell the building, then that definitely,
But what if you have people in there?
no,
You
these
can't
are,
have people-
these are being heard at the same town meeting. There won't be people in there.
We can't, you can say to the town meeting what you will, your citizen's petition. Doesn't mean that we have to
But the-
agree with
you
anything
know-
you say.
I agree. I would just love to
And-
have your support because I think this is an incredible opportunity to take a step forward and to actually bring back real numbers for people to look at so that we can make educated decisions.
I'm sorry if, as the chairman, I have to make a decision that we can't go forward to hear you, because we have no relationship with what you're proposing. That is, say, any legal relationship. You're proposing RFPs which are done by the executive branch. This is a legislative action by this committee. We recommend to the legislator, not to the executive branch.
I think what she's looking for is substance
Right?
to say that they can get this type of revenue from this type of resource.
Exactly.
But the problem is, if I'm one of the people who are considering whether I'm gonna fill in and make my response to an RFP, I'd say, this could all be just, I'd be working on a cloud, because.
But this
it
is
hasn't
going-
When
been
people give
defined.
information out for RFPs, it's basically a,
Fishing
Well,
exposition.
you know, an estimate. Basically, an RFP is an estimate. Companies give estimates all the time, and with these
It would be
estimates,
good if we had the
okay, I'm gonna
subcommittee here.
feel
If
whether
they
or
were-
not these people
we
can
should
rent this
postpone
space for
this
this amount of money. Nothing
committee
has to be acted on.
attendance.
It's an informational process only is what she's looking for. That's what I get out of it anyways, Tony.
But is it, if I respond to the RFP and then say I wanna rent this for $1,000 a month or whatever the
Okay.
response is, and then all of a sudden everybody agrees, well, we're gonna go ahead and do this,
Yeah.
you'd say, well, I don't wanna, I only spend $700 a month. I mean, that is the
There's always
RFP
a-
doesn't put anybody in handcuffs that says this is a commitment.
Exactly.
Okay, excuse me. David came up with I think, a solution. We're gonna postpone this until, and I'll ask the steering committee to come before us. And if the steering committee wants Leslie to speak on their behalf,
That would be fine.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair. Could I just address the other components just so I explain what they are in case there are questions that I don't even know are questions so that I can understand?
Quickly, please.
Okay, so that was the RFP portion. We've already talked a little bit about to act favorably on the report of the steering committee. Access to the building, I do want to explain that a little bit. So we've looked at a number of nonprofits that currently have access to town buildings because their mission has a related interest to what goes on in that building. Friends of the Library, Library Foundation, PTAs, the police union, there's a paramedics organization, all nonprofits, all have access to town buildings. So this was not meant to be unfettered access or absolute access, but there is a certain measure of access that a supporting nonprofit has with a town building to make sure that they are working in collaboration with that project and supporting it the best way that they can. For example, there are grants that are out there that the foundation could be applying for, but they may need a picture of something that might need to be worked on in the building to supplement their grant application. That's the kind of access that we're talking about. In conjunction with the town administrator, in conjunction with Dave Menard, access to be able to support the mission.
The entities you mentioned all have a contractual relationship with the town, therefore covered by liability insurance.
Contractual relationship, including rent, or a
They have a
non-monetary
relationship with the town.
contract?
Either through a grant or whatever. They have a contractual relationship. They have a relationship, a formal relationship with the town that is illegal and therefore covered by liability.
Does the steering committee have access to the building?
They're appointed.
They don't.
They do not.
They do not, which has been a problem. Some of them have never even been inside the building. Some of them have been once. So that is thank you for pointing that out. That is the other portion of the access question. And then the Council on Aging, and I'll just close with that. So the Council on Aging has long desired and advocated for moving to DECUS. Today there was an event that I think should underscore the importance of this to all of us, which is that the elevator went out in the multi-service center during an event with seniors in the basement. Seniors were also in an art class upstairs on the second floor. The elevator and stairs are the only way out of that basement space that the COA occupies. It is a safety issue. It has been raised by the COA repeatedly, and I would like us to address it before something terrible happens. It is a wise move to move the COA and seniors to an all one level space that has egress in many locations. And so that is why that is part of this, because they have an urgency that I think was really underscored today. Thank you. I really appreciate the time.
Thank you. I'll
One
let you
last-
know when we're rescheduled.
One last question, the DECUS steering committee, the DECUS Community Center Foundation.
Correct.
Who's the officers, directors, is it related to the town? And this is a entity trying to get into, so who's
Yep.
on it?
So the president is Brenda Ekstrom, the clerk is Jared Frederickson, I'm on the board. John Dahlmeyer is on the board, he's also on the DECUS steering committee. Diane Kenny is on the board, she's also on the DECUS steering committee. Jody Santagate is on the board, she's also on.
Have you got a 501c3 registration?
We have filed our paperwork with the IRS. We have a EIN number, our exemption is pending.
We are filed with the Secretary of State and
Yes.
the Attorney General's office.
That's the critical one for us.
Yes. And I've missed some things. Jody Santagate, Tracy Williams, also on the DECUS steering committee, and I'm missing one person. Mary Jane Driscoll is the treasurer. All people who have been working on this as volunteers for a year.
I will work through the steering committee, and they will
I appreciate
forward the
that.
information to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just say one thing, bringing it back? Looking at this budget is not even realistic.
Can I say
could
something?
No.
When you bring up, I'm just saying, when you bring up.
Derek looked at the expenses today and he blessed the expenses. He says they're right on.
Okay, but you're guaranteeing certain monies. A grant's never a guarantee.
I mean, I'm not guaranteeing them.
No, I'm
laying
just saying,
out
he's looking at, yeah, the numbers add up.
It is an estimate at the moment.
Right.
the
At the end,
income
at the end of the day, fundraising, you just never know. That goes as the economy goes sometimes, so. There's a
Well,
lot of things I
our
would question in here,
Our library relies on fundraising in excess
but they don't
of
figure
what
that
we-
into their budget.
They do. They absolutely do.
But to buy books, they very specific. The school department's a better example. They take half the money. They spend $50,000.
Okay, thank you, Jody, we'll have them
But I'm
back.
just saying, I would vote no on this, just on this budget.
Well, I will say that we've made a lot of progress on that budget, and we've worked with Derek on it, so it's not, doesn't come out of nowhere. And one other point is, that I'm not sure has been made, is that Derek has budgeted $200,000 for keeping all the utilities on for the building through FY '23, which gives time to fill some of those income question marks with actual grants, actual fundraising.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Oh, one last thing I'm gonna leave with you. I just have one copy because it was just given to me, which was a vote that was taken by the COA to support Articles 23 and 24. Thank you.
Wish you came out with that in the beginning.
Sorry, it was freshly given to me and I neglected to mention it.
I do have concerns with that too, because one of the steering committee members is a voting party on the COA.
Well, they're supposed to have a
Okay,
representative.
we'll move along. Review of the warrant articles. Article 15. This is always a good subject. We love getting into this.
So
Article
clean.
15, replace Swift Beach sewer line. That's a
Okay,
It's a deep line to replace.
listen, I'd like to put a sewer plant at Beacon Street, I just want you to know that. It'd be a good place for a sewer facility to get West Wareham. I just wanna throw that out there so the board's aware. I'm approaching that too, I'd like to put a sewer plant there. Anyways.
Take care of the industrial
We'll take an industrial park, but nonetheless, or Westfield, but nonetheless, Article, I believe it's at 15, I don't have it in front of me.
Yes.
It deals with Swiss Beach. Swiss Beach, as you're well aware, is a source of tremendous amount of infiltration and inflow to the treatment plant. Some pumps run constantly, and infiltration pipes are deep 8 to 17 feet consistently throughout Swiss Beach. We tried lining, or we lined Wankinko, which is along the beach, and then the feeder lines, we lined Bayview, we lined.
Okay, Guy, can I interrupt you one, please?
Sure.
My apologies. Leslie, are you waiting because you anticipate we're going to vote this evening?
No, I just didn't want to walk out and be rude.
Okay, I just wanted to, we don't typically vote the same day we hear the articles.
That's true, good point. All right, then I am gonna head out, thank you.
So this is really not interesting stuff.
Well, I know.
No, take it by all means, they
Are
wanna
you
stay,
gonna say
stay.
Swiss Beach?
I
No,
do.
it will be
It
interesting.
is interesting.
We'll have meetings to discuss it, because it's going on. So,
Thank you.
yes.
Thank you.
So nonetheless, we lined it. During the curing process, the sump pumps came on. And as you're curing CIPP with epoxy, we put temperature to it, whether it's steam or hot water, whatever, we put temperature to it. And it's 5 pounds of pressure holding it against the pipe to allow it to cure. Sump pump puts 30 plus pounds of pressure. It hits the line, it goes underneath the line and causes it to belly up. And it creates what we call a shark's tail down the whole length of the pipe. So now the lining, if you will, is void, it's null and void. And it solidifies like that and it becomes rock hard. So before we can even go down the line to reinstate if you will, all the laterals, we have to cut out that shock fin. It takes diamond tips, steel tips, or diamond pointed tips on a machine to grind it out a considerable length of time, and the contractor charged nothing to do that to reinstate these lines. Once that's done, you've destroyed the entire bottom of that liner, and the rest of the liner folds in on itself. So the main, if you will, gravity line down Wankinko, which was 8 inches, is now probably 4 inches. So it plugs all the time, and it backs up all the time, and it creates overflow. So we pump it weekly with a trash pump, 6-inch trash pump, to transfer it down. Same thing happened to Bay. So we looked at replacing it, and the replaced Wankinko was approximately $3 million 2.5 years ago. I don't know what it is today, but I believe there should be slight inflation, or at least inflation. So we looked at that, and then we looked at, I'm gonna use the word E1 generically, because E1 is like Reynolds wrap. And it's a grind-to-pump system. And so E1's been around for a while. They're kind of the Cadillacs. They know what they're doing. But there's also a lot of companies out there that are duplicating it. So it's good competitive bidding. But E1, the goal was to put E1 because one of the biggest advantages is their welded pipes, the solid pipes. So there'd be no infiltration. And they only go down 4 feet, and the water table is 6. And there are times in certain areas of that end of Swiss Beach that the water table is 2 feet. But nonetheless, it's generally 6 feet. So that would take care of that problem. And then we're going to put grinder pumps, and we figured the grinder pumps would solve a multitude of problems, one being baby wipes, or I call non-flushables. Everybody has a tendency to flush things that they're not supposed to flush. Why not? Out of sight, out of mind. They don't look at the cause. We go to pump stations, as an example, Terry Lane, every single day to derag those pumps. Creates a lot of problems because as the pump tries to push them rags through, it takes a lot more energy. And resistance to electric motor is one of the biggest causes of failure. So we're getting premature failure on our motors. And so that's just one cause of baby wipes that we're having a hard time with. And of course, some pumps pump freely into a gravity system. So if you have a grinder pump, some pumps don't pump freely anymore. You put your sump pump into a grinder pump, it's going to alarm that system constantly because it can't keep up with it. You flush baby whites and non-flushables, it's not going to work because that pump is going to grind to a halt. The homeowner becomes responsible for their actions. And maybe it's kind of a way to get rid of the problem of baby wipes and non-flushables and sump pumps. And sump pumps are 40% of our I&I. Infiltration and inflow. Inflow is sump pumps, which has a consistent flow. Sump pumps are illegal at all levels of government, federal, state, and local. Try to get rid of them. People in certain areas have basements that have become livable space, below sea level. To keep that space livable and usable, you have a sump pump, and they pump constantly. So the general consensus was to do something.
It's only illegal when it goes into the sewer system.
That's right.
Okay.
I apologize for that. Talking about sewer, and every level of government has a law saying you can't do it. You just cannot do it.
Pump it outside, it's not.
You got, and yes, that's on the homeowner. Yes, I agree with you. Thank you. Good point. Appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah. So you're right. So that is, such a high. So that's a focus. How do we get rid of them? And this becomes a viable answer. The other thing is as we bring all these lines up to 4 feet, as we have sea level rise, it no longer affects the pipes in that area because they're all sealed. It doesn't matter. Also, for the homeowner themselves, with a series of check valves, if there is to be a failure at one house, it doesn't affect all the others. And also in a gravity system, if there's a surcharge, it can back up into your house and create some damage. With the force mains, if you will, and check valves, I think there's 1, 2, 3, 3, and then the fourth, there's no potential, or I shouldn't say nothing's impossible, but it minimizes the potential of a backup into your home. So that's advantageous. And so there's a lot of reasons why it would be advantageous. And the other thing is just to replace one line at $3 million and to do one Kinko, to do Bayview, Barnes, Pleasant, Murphy, and I think there's one up Columbia up top. Now you're getting a bigger bang for that same buck. You're getting more addressed. If I just replace one Kinko with gravity, I'm still going to have the infiltration because gravity lines are put together and then they leak. Especially in a water table, pipe is 17 foot and it's going to do this in the water table as it comes up and goes down. So that joint is going to be compromised. So you don't change that at all. And then also you don't get rid of some pumps. They're still allowed to be pumped into the gravity system. So it makes more sense to go this way. So we had it priced out. We talked to E1, and they lay everything out for you, and they give you the dollar cost. That's where we got a dollar cost. We met with an engineer, and his job was to figure out what it's going to cost for the implementation of the project, the contractors, et cetera, et cetera. Contractors are more doable because you're down 4 foot. It opens it up to different size contracting companies. You're down 17 feet, 10 feet, you're restricted to the contractors because when you dig that deep in Swiss Beach, you gotta use shoring. When we did that 20-foot repair, we had the sheath down 22 feet. Then we had to de-water down to 22 feet. De-water, we put 12 points in a 20-foot section to de-water it. Swiss Beach failed twice in its construction because of groundwater. Never should have happened, but it did. It is what it is. And so if we do any digging, we're gonna run into the same issues. And if I move that much water, we did 20 feet and Dave Pichette went ballistic because I'm throwing water and there's no place to take it. And it's a constant pump. So it just doesn't make any sense to do the whole length of one Kinko. So it just is a better project, better product, not only today, but long-term. And that's important. So that's why we're moving forward with that project in one Kinko. And that's our goal. We'll have a multitude of educational meetings with the public so that we can give them a chance to vent. Because people will vent. Anytime you do change, I don't do change well. So anytime you do change, people are gonna vent. What about? And I see that. And also, when people are held accountable for their actions, sometimes it's very complicated too. So we expect that, but we'll have a series of meetings, open, let them discuss and talk, and we think it's important that they understand. And then in the process, explain to them why we're doing what we're doing and the advantages of doing it. And that's gonna be our approach for this project.
Does this mean there's a grinder pump at each house?
Each house.
Each house.
That the town's gonna own and take care of. So if we put the grinder pump there and you say what Dave says, I'm not changing my habits and it plugs all the time. We're gonna come down, we're gonna fix it, Dave, every time. We're gonna leave you a bill. Say, Dave, just keep doing this, but we'll leave you a bill.
Nice.
We're thinking that after a few bills, say, wait a minute, I'm not gonna flush those, them things anymore. It doesn't make any sense to me. And that's the goal. It's really hard. I met a guy from Germany on the Narrows project, and I'm looking at some different lining, and he said to me something that was profound. He says, I don't understand why people have to be forced to do what's right for the community. I don't understand it. And I was like, oh, okay. So, and I don't know Germany. I don't pretend to know it, and we didn't get into philosophical, political debates, but I was just taken aback by that comment. And so, sometimes you have to do things to accomplish the goal that's for the better good, because this is for the better good. And this technology, I'd like to take all over. I've actually applied for a grant, we're applying officially, but we did it unofficially through the EPA to look at this on a large scale and let the engineers look at and the logistics of it, doing manholes all over again, the whole 9 yards, because I have to address, whether I like it or not, the rising sea level and effects on the pipes that nobody sees. We see it at the plant. We see all that. We see the results of all of it. We deal with it, but no one else sees it. So we have to address it. So if we get some studies, okay, what are we going to do in the future? Because it's not going away.
Going to get worse.
It's going to get worse. And so we have to be prepared for it. So we're looking at the long term, and what do we do with all these pipes to make them solid, and to handle this whole thing as it happens. So that's the impetus, a part of the impetus to the project and the way we entered.
How much did it cost you to grind out that pipe?
Nothing. I got to tell you, the contract did it at his cost. It cost me nothing. And he estimated $100,000 to do that grind. And he didn't charge us.
With your cameras, could you have identified the source of the sump pumps that would?
We could, but once you start lining, nothing goes in the liner. So,
Right.
And we knocked on every door. We put stickers, not stickers, flyers on every door. We hung them on the door. We talked to everybody, and we got, don't worry about it. Either they didn't have a sump pump, or they were going to put it off. We had one gentleman say, I don't care what you do, I'm not shutting mine off. I'm going to Florida, I'm not going to damage my basement. So he was very, very adamant. We should have, in retrospect, is went out and dug up his lateral and cut it. And put a plug on it, so we should have done. And if I was to do lining again, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut up laterals, I'm going to cut them, I'm going to cap them, and then I'll do the job, let it cure, and then reconnect. because of that expense is gonna save me a tremendous expense at the backside, because people just won't shut them off. They just won't. And there's legitimate, I forgot, but there's also, you know, if you have a basement you're protecting that you're living in, it's not going off.
What is your current fine if you find someone with a sump pump?
So
It was on paper.
on paper, it's up to $5,000, it's so much, $300 a day or whatever it is, that's in the bylaw. Get in the basement to verify it.
Called enforcement.
Get in the
Yeah, it's
basement.
private property, you
I
can't go
ca-
on
you
it
tell,
unless
I'm gonna
it's
knock on
authorized.
your door and you're gonna say, hey. So we were thinking, so it's funny, because as I go to your house and you're paying for these service charges because your sump pump's alarming me, because we're gonna monitor it, I'm gonna be able to see it because it's gonna have a monitor and send it back to the plant. We're thinking that, you know, first of all, you're gonna be tired of paying for it. We'll say, well, why don't we come down and give us a look? Let's go and see what we can do and see if we can help you out. So that'll be a verification, because you're gonna be, well, let's come down and see it and see what we can do, and that's what we're offering. On a side note to this, and it's not part of this project, but we're also looking at the potential of using the abandoned pipes for the connection of the sump pumps to put it to the storm drain with treatment at the back end. That's a consideration. It's gonna cost some money, and if that can be realized, we're talking to DEP and there's grant money available to plan it. If that can be realized, then that's something we could do and charge a fee for it for each homeowner to give, so they have a viable place to go with it. So we're looking at that. We're not, you know, it's not that we're not sensitive to what's going on, but we are to the point where we can't have it no more. We just simply can't have it. So that's where we are with it.
And if you were able to charge a fee into that alternate system, it would pay for itself anyway.
Absolutely.
If you broke even, that'd be the best thing.
That's the bottom line. It's not about making money. It's about, and that's important, because I like to give options. I really do. But this part of the project, we're not funding for.
Yeah, you have to do what you have to do today.
Yeah, so that's the goal.
Questions, gentlemen? Norma?
You said when you priced out just replacing the gravity system, it was a little over $1 million, is that right? So
3 million,
it was
2.5 years ago.
Okay, and this is 3 million.
Yes.
Okay.
Jody?
You know, I don't know if there's a way, formula you can use. I heard last night 130 grinder pumps or so you're gonna
Roughly.
put in. Is there any idea how much sump pump water, or I&I water, call it whatever you want, you might cut down on? Would be a significant amount that you would notice that
So that's a valid
Yeah,
point. And I'll try to explain it this way, because we can quantify it. We know that we get X amount of gallons of I&I per inch of rain. We know that. We can even knock it down a little. We get between 150 and 300, depending on the amount of rain and the saturation of the ground, how fast it comes. So those are all factors. So we know that. But we also know that 40% of that is sump pumps. So that's a quantifiable number, 40%. And we also know that if we remove a sump pump, we get rid of the source. If I line a pipe, I get rid of it here, but because it's groundwater, it just moves on down the road. So I haven't done anything, unless I did every single pipe. So to attack and to approach with grinder pumps, to attack sump pumps makes the most sense, because that's quantifiable and removed from the system, never to be seen again. Those are hard numbers, and that's capacity. So that makes more sense for us than chasing I&I, infiltration part of I&I. Inflow is a real number. And inflow duration, after a rainstorm, that sump pump doesn't come on and stop. It's days. It's days. Because the water table comes up, it's just days. And so it's more of an impact to the system. Especially it rides, peaks are designed for ebb and flows of a sewer system. What that does is it takes those peaks and just makes them consistent. So you have no valleys anymore, because they're all the valleys. It's just, and so we design a wastewater plant for peak flow, we do. But we design it mostly for the peak to be an hour or a minimum amount of time, and then it goes back to normal flow. Sump pumps negates all that. So that's why they become more of a problem, especially with the wet weather. More and more wet weather, it's become more of a problem. And so we have to attack it.
Yeah, I guess the question is, I know every project that comes into town, sewage and how much capacity is it gonna add to the system? Would this be a significant amount where you might be able to say, well, we have another 200,000 gallons that we can put out there for?
That's a good question, and we'd like to go there. We're also looking at something along the lines of if you connect to the system, there'll be some type of charge or way of you mitigating sump pumps to offset the gallons that you're bringing in. So capacity stays level and we can continue to grow in a real life way. So we're looking at the viability of that too. So yes, we'd like to remove all the inflow portion and find a way that you want to come into town, you want to do a 23,000 gallon per day project, okay? You get rid of, and we'll say not 23, maybe 28, maybe 30, whatever the number is, you get rid of that. And we can put a dollar cost to it so that right now the connection fee, if there's already a sewer line there, so let's go to Industrial Block, there's a lateral in front, and it services, you know, a bookstore with some workers, very minimal impact and sewer. You come in, you're gonna put this major factory. There's no sewer fee. It's just, okay, EDUs, square foot of the building, that's it. All of a sudden, your impact is greater, more significant for the same dollar. So there should be a fee for that. Okay, there's a fee for that 23,000 gallons you want to add. And it should be a reasonable fee. And you can take that fee and do something viable, something with teeth. And that's the discussion we're having now and looking at other communities that are doing it, how they're doing it, and get some kind of insight in implementing something like that to help us. Because we're going to borrow, bluntly, we got hundreds of millions of dollars to do. We can't borrow it all. So there's got to be a way to bring in revenue to help us get the job done too, and that's something we're thinking of and how to implement that also.
Are other towns putting these grinders in just maybe say specifically to try to cut down on the sump pumps?
Other towns are putting them in on coastal communities. They're becoming more and more popular and common. Even inland, like Groton and some other communities, that I would think they wouldn't need them, but they're putting them in for very reasons. And also, even if it's not a sump pump issue, it's a rags issue. It's a baby wipe issue. It's an issue because it's a costly thing for us to go out there and derag pumps constantly. If it's your issue and you're being personally affected, you will address it.
By not putting them in,
And not
being
putting
more
it in.
careful.
And just so you understand on that particular issue, if the entire system was all gravity-based, instead of having to go through pumping stations, you'd still have the problem, only it would all be at the plant. And we'd be binding everything up there, and the stuff that gets destroyed there is a much higher cost.
Which you'll see, we've got a IUP, we're writing an article for $20 million for upgrade of the headworks that's destroyed.
So, I mean, it's,
So
all this is taking that,
It's moving the problem downstream, per se.
flushables that aren't flushable, but are sold as flushables, out of the system. But it's gonna be on an individualized basis that it goes out of the system, because if you've got a grinder pump in front of your house and it gets bound up by the stuff you're sending down there that you shouldn't have, and you're paying that bill 2 or 3 times for doing that, you might think about not doing it anymore.
And if anybody's watching, they should realize that holds true for septic systems too.
Absolutely.
Because I lived in,
Absolutely.
backed up into the house from flushables, as they call them.
Oh, yeah.
There should be a non-flushable tax when they sell us.
that's, that's hitting it. That's hitting at the source. Okay, it's hitting at the source. You pay more for it, absolutely. 'Cause
Yeah,
it's-
no, it
it's-
should, there's, you know, you pay whatever, a nickel for a Coke bottle or something like that, you gotta pay extra. Because it's a cost, there's no question about it.
No question. And because
And it
it's,
drives the manufacturer to figure out how the hell do we make them flushable.
we've been trying,
Real flushable.
Yeah.
in reality, through different organizations throughout the country, have been trying to get the manufacturer to address it, and they refuse. It actually was an article in Congress about 3 years ago, and they went as far as to say that they had to be more clear on the packaging. That's as far as they would go. There's a lot of,
It's just gotta work, it's gotta be flushable or not flushable, it can't be.
anything's flushable. G.I. Joe's flushable.
Absolutely.
Anything's flushable.
I pulled one of those.
Legos.
Everything's flushable, and that's real. It's just that what's desirable or what's acceptable. And all these things, because they want them to last longer, whether you're cleaning your counter or doing something in your body, it's all fibrous material, so it doesn't, that's why toilet paper, I don't use it because it breaks up, it dissolves, it disintegrates. That doesn't work.
Joe can hold his breath longer than we can.
It doesn't work. So that's, I
Won't float
mean,
it down the system.
it's business. you know, Procter and Gamble and its business. They can sell a product that lasts long, they can tout it that way, and they make more money. So yeah, and we have to deal with the aftermath, and that's what we're trying to accomplish. It's a huge problem for us.
Okay, moving right along, no pun intended. Article 17,
We move it, and that's Narrows Force Main.
yes.
I believe it was probably 6 years now. We had a report, I think it was 2016 or something. We had a report done on Narrows Force Main. We got a technology from Canada, and what they did is they cut out a 10. We went in the road on Minot Ave, in front of the school. That's the high point, and we cut out a 10-foot section, and we dug down to the pipe and cleared it. And the first observation was a tremendous rust on the exterior of the pipe, so we got rid of all that rust. And then we put bracelets every 6 inches or 8 inches, I forget, but we put bracelets, electrical bracelets along the 10-foot length, connected them to a truck parked up in the parking lot of the school, and they read the wall thickness. And we found that wall to be from 47 to, I believe it was 97% deterioration in that 10-foot section. So we said that's a known, the high point, we expect it to be the worst. So we went to the lowest point and did the same thing next to the Narrows pump station. That was better. I think that was 18 to 48 or 50% deterioration, which we expected because it's the lower point, the high is worse. We don't know what's in the middle or what's after. We can only assume there's deterioration. So at that time, there was a recommendation to replace it within 5 years. They gave us a 5 years window because corrosion, as I understand, is explained to me, I didn't know, it just gets worse and worse. It isn't like it's a steady state. We're only going to do 1% a year. No, it just goes. And the deeper it gets, the more rapid it goes. So they said 5 years. So we're a little past that. The pipe is 50 years, which is its life expectancy. So it may get a few more years. But I asked myself, what's the likelihood of failure? Pretty high. What's the consequence of failure? Severe. So it has to be replaced. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. Our first approach was to dig everything up and put brand new pipes alongside to have redundancy. And that was an $8 million cost. Then we looked at CIPP, which is replacing and repairing the pipe. And some of the CIPP was not cost effective because of the cost of bypassing the duration and length of digging pits. What we found we call slip lining to pull something in, and we found a product in Germany called Primus. And it's like a hose with Kevlar center. And so it literally is pulled into the host pipe. And once you apply sewer to it, it inflates and it stays there. And it's just has a 5-year guarantee, has a 50 to 100-year life. I said, okay, that's something with ductile iron. So that's one of the reasons why we decided on that. The cost of the total project was $3 million. We had them budgeted. That includes the cost of the material and the contractors installing it and the bypass. So it made sense to move forward. It's a $5 million savings. Kind of made sense. And so we said, we'll go that route because we have 4 more that need to be done. So we're saving the $5 million we save here. I'd like to apply to Heinz, which is a sister, exact same time, same year, and we had a break at the other end of Heinz, and we got a coupon, same condition. But we're also going to do an evaluation at High Point to verify that too, because due diligence, and always the fear of somebody asking, did you do it? No, we did this little piece, and did you do that? And so now we kick it some more, trying to answer that question and do some more. So we're just going to do it and be done with it. And we are certain we're going to find the same results, and we'll move on to place that. So if we can do these things cheaper, then we can get more done, 50 to 100-year period, and we think it's a better way to go. And so that's why we're using the technology we're using to replace a pipe that absolutely has to be replaced. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. And so that's where we are with that.
Basically, we don't want to run into a Plymouth situation.
I was thinking that as Guy was presenting. And they neglected it and had the consequences that you suggested.
Yeah.
And what was the rough cost to them?
Well, it was, last I knew, it was $55 million, and it bankrupted the enterprise, and then they tell me there's another 30, and I know that bypass was $18,000 to $25,000 a day, so it bankrupt. Once you bankrupt the entity, the enterprise, the town kicks in and everybody pays for it, and that's what happened in Plymouth. So it's very controversial, and everybody's suing everybody, and that's never a good thing. So it's gonna cost the town more money than you can imagine, because lawyers aren't cheap, and this is an ongoing, long-term battle, so it's
Good thing for the lawyers.
it's a substantial cost, so you gotta stay away from it.
Now, the combination of these two is 6 million.
That is
How does
correct.
that impact your funding?
So, we're gonna take it, that's a good question. Right now, if you look at the budget, under capital, I have $690 or $680-some thousand. So that's for this year. Next year, that's going to go to the bonding or to the cost of debt. And that takes care of that one. We've done it with the last two. After that, we're done. So we're gonna raise rates next year, in next January, to make up for the next ones that we got coming, because we need to have the capital, or if you will, the debt service for this whole thing, because it's all about debt. And I think you all probably know as well as I do, the bipartisan infrastructure bill is out, and every bit of it in Massachusetts, and I'm told 49 other states, is going through the abatement trust, the water abatement trust, which is the SRF program. And to get involved, you have to have IUPs they call them. It's something intended use plan, and so you've got to draw that up. Then from there you go onto a checklist and a numbering system and an evaluation, and then they release in January, February of who they're taking. If their project's taken, then you're in that pool and you can fund. Then there's some commitments. The beauty of this program, and it hasn't been seen, I'm told, in decades, is it has a debt forgiveness of up to 48%. And certain communities that meet the criteria of poverty, if you will, can be 100% what is called principal forgiveness. And I mean, unheard of. And it's gonna be the next 5 years. So we got all this work to do, so it makes all the sense in the world to get these in there. Because if we don't get an IUP, we're not even considered. And I don't want to lose the opportunity to get all the work that we need done with a program that I may never see again. And it's a very, very good program.
So we are applying for them.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. We're gonna have our first one in this July. So we'll be on the list in January. Yeah,
Maximum of 100%. The clothes you wear in your garden now became your best dress.
Yes. It's powerful. It's powerful. When I read it, because I was online to it in the seminar, I think it was a week ago, 2 weeks ago, because last week I was out. When I read it, I was like, let me read this again. I said, no, let me read this again. And when I said there are certain communities up to 100%, so it becomes a grant. I said, no, that can't be. And then I made some phone calls. Oh, yeah, I said, oh, are you kidding me? I said, so I got on the phone. Yeah, let's get busy. I called my engineers. Let's get busy. You figure it out, because we have the projects. We have the projects.
We have the projects, absolutely.
We've got so now let's just figure out the best ones to do, prioritize them, and get them in there for the next 5 years. And so that's what we're going to. That's
Good.
the goal.
What is all this doing for capacity?
Well, short answer is nothing, because capacity is capacity. But the I&I is a huge thing, and when we get the grant money for the infrastructure repairs, we're going to address that through, if you will, the technology of. There's two technologies I'm looking at. I really find interesting. One is the E1s, but there's also another one in the Midwest, and gravity lines are welded, and the caps that go to laterals are welded. It's PVC, what's it called, HDPE, I think it is. It's welded. So you have no joints. So in this process, when we apply for these loans and to do relining of pipes, we're going to replace them with this type of design, especially if it's above, I think above 6 feet or in 6 or 7 feet. Bottom line is, now I have an answer because I can't get infiltration. That's capacity. We are robbed with capacity of fresh water, if you will. That takes capacity. When you're getting, 150,000 per inch of rain and it rains, that means that's $150,000 that surcharges that system that you cannot use. And I have to put that into my calculations as my total flow, so I can't give it away. If I can get rid of it, then those gallons become available. So that's what capacity comes in. And that's all part of the project, so we have to think about that as we move forward.
But as an aside for that, too, that the EQ basins that we finished, the last project that we had, the EQ basins there, were basically a result of capacity, lack of capacity, and the rainstorms. Because you get too much coming through into the system, backs up, where's it gonna go, it overflows the bin.
On the front
So we
end,
gotta-
you put
You
the-
gotta put some.
Back end. We've got the front end, we got 2 minutes front, 2 minutes back end. So the problem was, when it came in, we could push it through. But when it got to the back end, and I could talk all day about it. The clarifiers in 1972, so they antiquated, they're 10 feet, totally unacceptable. Today it's a minimum of 14 feet, because we're asked to settle out solids and do a lot of different things with them. We're incapable. So when you get that flow, it blows all the solids over, plugs up all the back end, and the water goes all over the ground, which is a violation. So we put basins there to address that. Didn't solve any problems, it just got us out of the regulations because we're gonna get fined and hit hard, because you can't put sewer on the ground. And so we addressed it. So now we're out of that fine territory, so we can at least we have a place to go other than, and where we put them is where all the water went anyways. If you see the new basins and you look at that area, you'll say, my God, that was all ground, and we'd fill it with sewer water. The DEP was good to us, and I gotta tell you, they were real good to us, and they helped us get through this, because it could have been dangerous, because we were doing it constantly. You do something once, you address it, they're okay with it. Twice, well, we're a little concerned. 3 times, now wait a minute, we're more than concerned. The 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th time, yeah, it gets to be very bad. You see, and so they worked with us. We told them, and they knew about the rain events and the inadequacies we had at the plant. They knew the design. It was cut tremendously to save money. I think we cut out, and I think it's $27 billion so we can get it to where we could pay for it. And what you gave up, what the town gave up, is critical. And we knew when we did it that we're going to have issues, but we'll address them down the road. Well, here we are. Time travels quicker than you think. Here we are. So we're going to address all that. So to answer your question directly, nothing right at this point other than grabbing some capacity through I&I. The real answer is decentralized sewer in areas that we need to sewer. And that's why I was kidding, said I want the school and I want Westfield, because I want to put treatment plants there, groundwater discharge treatment plants, for 2 reasons. One, to address the area, to remove the nitrogen, because that total mass daily loading of nitrogen is here, folks. It's here. I looked at it today, and we'll have it official by the end of the year. And so at the Wareham River, and I think the number was presented 0.04. That's all. It's a loading. So when they take a sample from that point of the Wareham River, that nitrogen better not be over 0.04, period. So we have to address it. So it's here. So getting rid of the septic system and doing some treatment in these areas, in West Wareham, whatever, is the way to go. And that's decentralized. That's another way I want to do it. We know the canals out there, and I owe you guys booklets. I don't know, but I have booklets for each one of you on that. Everything that was done, put up by the Buzz Bay Coalition, everything was done. All the numbers, everything's in there, all the communities, and I have it. I'll get it. It's in my briefcase. I apologize, and I didn't bring it, but I owe you that. I'll get it to you. But that's an answer. But we're doing a comprehensive wastewater management plan today. The last one's gone. So we owe the state one, and that's part of the capital plan. We had projected $650,000. I've got another quote from another company that's a lot lower. So that's great. So I said, I'll go another company. Well, it didn't get a lot lower, but anyways, so we're going to save some money there. But that plan's going to outline for the town what we have to do to meet the total mass loading and everything else. And it's going to talk about decentralized sewer. It's going to talk about the canal. It's going to talk about IA systems that may be viable if they tied into the system. We had talked about if we do IA systems where they do a less of a nitrogen load, the problem always is who's going to maintain them. Homeowners, yeah, I'm good. So, and rightfully so. It's not their forte. I don't blame them. But if the treatment plant owned that and we put them in and there was a betterment, because you're going to pay anyways, whether you're you or, and you paid anyways, and we took over ownership and maintenance, the whole 9 yards, now it's a doable thing because it's going to be maintained and it's going to be guaranteed to do what it's supposed to do. So we look at that too. So all this will be addressed in our comprehensive wastewater management plan. We'll submit it to the DEP. They will review it. There'll be public comment periods, the whole 9 yards, and then they'll adopt it. Then we'll take it to the Board of Selectmen. They'll adopt it, and that's the town's plan for the future. And so we're in the middle of doing that because we have to. The other one's gone. The new 20-year plan has to be presented. And so that's where we are with that. So that's going to address all the different technologies and all the things we have to do because it evaluates the system. I have a new permit. We haven't renewed our permit since 2013. It's supposed to be done every 5 years. Well, I just got it from the EPA. And to be blunt, they weren't worried because we have great numbers. We're at 2 parts per million nitrogen on a 4 part per million permit. And we're below 0.2 on phosphorus, which is a 0.2 permit. So they weren't worried about us. But now they're doing 44 plants in mass, and so we're on that list, and we just got it. The responsibilities are doubled and tripled. That's all there is to it. So we have an opportunity to address all these issues through funding through this SRF program. It's a beautiful thing. Timing is perfect. I'd like to put off the PFAS. I'm going to appeal some things. So I don't think PFAS should be our problem. That's a tough one to deal with. That's going to be a major upgrade to the plant to deal with PFAS. I don't want to do it. So we're going to ask that they delay that. Great idea, EPA, we love it. But can we delay it 4 or 5 years? And that's going to be our pitch, because I don't want to tell them they're foolish, but I want to tell them that the timing is not good. And so that's going to be part of our appeal. And the states, now I have 2 permits now because the state and the EPA is, and so I have to do the same thing with the state. And it all has to be in by April 11th. And so I'm going to tell them both, I don't want this, I don't want that. And if I don't do that, then I can't do an official appeal if I don't make a public comment on why I don't like it. So we're going to do that too. So
Now,
we're
Jim,
gonna do that.
with all the anticipated programs that Guy is delighted in talking about, we don't get involved in what your committee does, but do you anticipate a significant rate increase in the short term?
Well, we're gonna have to do a rate increase. I won't say it's significant. What did we come up with, 10%?
We did a 15% rate increase that goes into effect August 1st for the August billing cycle. That's going to generate, I believe it was $800,000, and that's going to go towards debt. So each year we have to review our debt, then review what we're going to go in the rate increase. I'm going to be very blunt to you, that we haven't done rate increases at that facility. I think we've done 3 in the 13 years I've been here. And they've been like $1.50. And the rate increases are insignificant. We generate $100,000. I just bought a truck for $180,000. So it doesn't do anything, but beside the point. So we've done it, we're looking at debt as we know it's come. So we said, okay, what's in 15%? And we took the percents and the EDU rate and said, okay, this is what we're getting and this is the money range we gotta be at. So this is what it has to be. And it'll be evaluated, the board will evaluate every single year. It's okay, what is our obligations and what's it? Because when the EPA gave us this last $9 million loan, they were appalled at our rates. No, we should move to your town. Your rate should be $1,200 right now. I don't know why they ain't. And I said, well, around here, rates are they just don't talk about them. They just don't do them. They just.
Well, I know that every day that passes, each of the issues become much more critical. And you're starting to address them. And the issue, of course, is the cost.
Okay.
But that other grant possibility would be a savior for us.
It's huge. It's huge because no one wants to raise rates substantially. Nobody. Who does? I don't want to pay more for anything. I love milk, and I'm upset that it's cost me more money.
You just paid $190 for a truck.
For a truck, a dump truck. And I was lucky to get it because the milk I wanted was 2 years out.
This truck cost me more than my first house did.
But yeah, it's significant. I'm excited about the programs, and I want to jump on it. But rates got to be what they got to be. I hate to say it. I mean, we all, and I get it. But you got to. Sewer is imperative, and it has a cost.
Yeah.
It just has a cost, and we have to address the cost and get it done and figure out how to pay for it. We just have to. We can't ignore it.
I have a suggestion. I'm a visual person. Many of us are. If you have to dig up any of those lines that you're replacing, save some pieces and put them out in front of your office, that they'll see the inside or what is left of the inside of those pipes.
I've
And
done it.
this validates what you're saying, as you've seen on the TV cameras.
I will have to get some, because I've done it, and I've showed you what grease can do, the breaks of the pipe, the damage, the lining, the corrosion. I've done that, and the ladies in the office get very upset with me because they smell them, but yes, that's a great idea. I'll find another place for them and lay them out, because once you see it, it's hard to, you say a visual, it's hard, and many people are. But when you see it, you go, oh my God, how the heck? If it wasn't for the ground around it, because that becomes the pipe.
Ask Claire for a table space in the lobby there.
I can do that. That'd be great. That'd be great. I can bring them all. It's crazy.
It's the most important asset this town has, is that.
Absolutely.
That
I believe that, but I'm biased. But I believe that it dictates our growth. Our public health. Sanitation. It's and there's not. Gosh, I think about what I would do. I look at Narrows pumps. If that went down and I couldn't move sewer, the impact to the town would be. I'd shut the hospital down. The impact. I'm working with the hospital now. I want to get some frac tanks. I want to do something for emergency, because that hospital cannot stop. But if there's not water running out, it's a major safety health issue.
The guy from the way I understand is that the Narrows pump station takes everything this side of the Narrows that we cover, and the industrial park, the mall.
Glad you live on the other side of it, right?
Yes,
Absolutely.
that was going to be the next thing. Over here, but yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much, gentlemen.
My
It's
pleasure.
always a pleasure to hear you talk, Guy.
Thank you, and it's a
Yes,
pleasure to be
the
here.
audience.
Gentlemen, I just want to say, I never thought sewerage would be interesting. I was not expecting this tonight, and I think you deserve an Oscar. I'm watching you from the back and listening to you, and I've been mesmerized. I'm either really a really sad person, or you guys are really, really good. So, thank you for the lesson.
Thank you, Guy. Thank you, Jim.
Guy, one quick thing, you owe me some paperwork from our budget
You didn't
meeting?
get it? I sent it to Derek. I'll get it to you. I do.
that's-
I sent it to Derek.
You're supposed to send it to Bernie.
We definitely
Well,
would like.
Derek,
Send it to me, Guy.
I haven't forgotten about you.
I have one is, the next day, because I had to put it on all the drives to Derek. Personally to Derek, then all the drives. So it's in the drives. I did that the very next day. So I apologize. I will get, along with your books. Where's the best place to deliver?
Electronic?
The book copy electronic. I can do electronic to you on the budget.
Yeah, okay. Or the mail slot at, outside the
Sounds good. Sounds good.
selectman's office.
Yep, sounds good. I'll get you the books, and I'll get you electronically. I'll send you the budget.
That'll be great, Guy.
Yes. And you're gonna see that I did get a raise, after all, so. Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you all.
Thank you, both of you.
Okay, Article 18 is next for special legislation for the Wareham Affordable Housing Trust. Article 18. Oh, Jim,
Hello, what are we doing?
do you have time to get a nap over there in
No,
24?
I needed to go to the other meeting, like I had said, I had the meeting at 7, so that's why I asked to get
Oh,
up early
then
in the
work-
agenda.
Worked
So I
well.
wasn't, so I left, and luckily it got done, so I could get back in time to do this. So, how is everyone?
Very good, Jimmy.
Good. What can I do for you?
The Affordable Housing Trust, we haven't had that before us. And you're asking that 50% of the proceeds from the sale of properties taken by tax title be directed to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund account.
Yes. He's got a copy of that, I assume, and you distributed it to the board?
Yes, we have copies.
Okay. So, basically, 50% of the net proceeds, I think in the last 2 years, of tax title properties which are auctioned off, we've had one. So that would have generated for the town, I think it was $65,000, so.
That was the sale price of that property?
No, that's what was the net proceeds were.
That's what the house you just did, or whatever
Yeah,
you just.
the sale price was around 300,000.
It was 210.
Was that what it was? Yeah.
But then you have to pay the back taxes and everything else, and
Yeah.
court stuff, and you gotta pay the auctioneer, and so that would have been 2 years generated, over the last 2 years, the only one that was done, about $32,000 for the Affordable Housing Trust. Now, the Affordable Housing Trust was created around 2008. Great idea, but didn't have a funding source. So over the last few years, we've been working on one. We just changed the quorum from a supermajority to a simple majority of a 5-member board. For a number of years, they're only meeting with 3 members, so now we have a full 5-member board. It's active. Basically, you need funds in order to carry out affordable housing, and not just in the sense of doing it in a long-term planning, but be able to run programs where if a need arrives, or if we have the program in place, you can distribute funds without having to wait 6 months to go in front of town meeting requesting it through CPC and do all the hoops. We're allowed to hold property, have funding, and this is just the first step in trying to do that. It's also recommended in the housing production plan that we just put together. And we just voted on that at the Board of Selectmen's meeting last night. And there'll be a hearing on it, I think on the 23rd of the month, or the 28th, I forget the date.
23rd is tomorrow.
Yeah, it might.
23rd is today.
I know, so, that would be public, and the planning board, I can look it up, the planning board will have a hearing on it, and, we voted to approve it, and it's recommended in that we have some funding sources for it. We will look to CPC in the longer range also, but again, this is a first step, and we think it's viable. Oftentimes, tax title properties are done because people haven't paid the taxes, but there's usually reasons associated with it. And sometimes it's just hard times, hard luck, death in the family. Things don't get settled. The tax bills build up, and the town just takes it and sells it. So we think it's a good use, and we could put it to helping people out, and there's nothing wrong with helping people out.
Questions, Jody?
You get the funding. If you did get the funding, how would you determine who gets the money? Who would make that determination?
The Affordable Housing Trust.
There'd be criteria put in place, how there is?
Yes.
Once you get the funding, then you can work on.
Yeah, you'd have to qualify, you'd have to financially qualify for it.
At the end of the day, the Affordable Housing Committee would be to make the determination.
Correct.
Okay.
We're a freestanding board.
Right.
How is the money used now from these sales?
It goes into the general fund,
So,
like the big sweep.
there would have to be some kind of reduction in that fund.
No, you don't, it's unanticipated revenues. Do you follow me? So that you
Sure.
can't really plan on using it because you don't know if you're going to get it.
But there's some assumption that's made about it, I assume, I would think, in the town budget.
No, there isn't.
No,
No.
it's
No.
just free money.
It doesn't happen every year.
It doesn't
It's in
exist.
this free cash, basically.
Until it's sold,
Free
and then
cash.
the selectmen have to declare it surplus property, or so they put it on the auction.
Nothing happens overnight.
No, so nobody counts on that money other than
No, it
what
happens,
you're
it
proposing.
happens, you know.
Well, yeah, and again, we can't, it wouldn't be a regular source of revenue, but it would be a source of revenue. There's other ways we can get revenue, and we have to try to exercise that. When they come in with developments, try to get part of the developers to donate some funds, especially for the very big developments. So we're just trying to make it a viable board, and it's just not a board that, we have a responsibility, but we need to have funds in order to exercise what our job really is.
Give me some specifics, Jim, of what you would do with the money, or what you could do with the money.
Well, we're looking to have either hire a consultant and/or a part-time unbenefited individual to actually do the work necessary to have a viable, affordable housing trust, so that someone to process paperwork, someone to answer the questions of people who are interested or in need of funding or assistance. Could be down payments on homes, could be helping people out with apartments. There's a number of things you can do, and also you can fund projects which could fall under and in the subsidized housing inventory.
But this would only be one-time expenditures, because there's nothing, consistent. Because we don't do a tax load, tax lien sales very often.
Right, but we'll take whatever we can to help meet
Once
our
you
end.
have it or expend it, it's gone. You don't have,
Until
you
there's
can
another
constantly
one.
fill it.
I understand that. We understand that. And like I said, we'll look towards what we can do with community preservation, and that's just another. That's just something else down the road that we're looking to do.
Well, CBC will ask for a project that you're going to accomplish.
Not necessarily.
Well, it's not
There's
going to be
ways you
operational
can-
funds.
There's ways
that's
you
for
can do it otherwise.
Well, you're not going to get it for operational funds.
I don't know.
It's very specific. Jim, you know that.
Huh?
Jerry?
Hey, Jim,
What's that?
do you have any money now?
Yeah, we had 238,000. We funded the part of the project up at 165 Great Neck Road. That was funded in 18. They just finished it. We funded it last year, $100,000. We're down to about 135,000.
Where did cash come from, other than the Federal Reserve?
I believe this was pre-me. Well, that's not me. I believe there was a grant from Walmart when they first moved in. There was some funds from the condominiums that went down in Onset about 6 years ago for the homes that were not affordable. So they gave so much per unit for that. Just hit and miss, and we didn't spend a lot of it.
Solicited though by the authority.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct.
Now, do you do like a yearly financial statement, profit and loss, or?
That's, I think it's done under the town, tell you the
Is
truth.
it part
It's
of the
done
town?
through John Foster's office. He's the one that releases our funds. We request it, and he's the one who actually releases it.
Yeah, we don't see it in our accounts, though.
I don't know if you do or not.
No, as a trust, we don't.
Okay.
Any other questions? Concerns?
How long has the trust been in effect in Wareham?
Since around 2008.
And do you have a list of accomplishments?
There wasn't a lot done. They did, like I said, they only had 3 members, so they did a couple housing production plans, but really weren't active as far as funding or doing anything. They did get some money, and so we're trying to make it a functional, affordable housing trust fund. And just not something in name.
Now, there must be other affordable housing trust funds in the state.
Oh, yeah.
So there must be some that you can point to as being, this is the way we like to be.
I go to a number of webinars with the Massachusetts Housing Trust and other groups. And actually, I really appreciate that we're utilizing the Zoom technology for these, because it's easy to attend it. You don't have to get in a car and drive
But
an hour and a
what
half.
projects have they cited, Jim? that
Who's
do?
they?
The-
Oh, they
the
do,
other
they
other
do well.
groups.
It depends. Some towns have very sophisticated housing trusts, and they have staff, and they're able to go after state
What kind
grants.
of projects do they do, Jim?
Hold on. So they're able to go after state grants, and they can do housing projects.
What projects, Jim?
Oh, you want a specific one?
That's the third time I've asked the question.
Well, I don't have that answer for you.
Okay, well, then just
Yeah.
tell me you don't, that's all.
Yeah.
It would be nice if you could get us some of that information.
What does Bob Paulides do? And that.
He's the Wareham Housing Authority.
Yeah.
They oversee the elderly housing.
Yeah, and they encourage development of elderly housing.
Well, actually, it's elderly and handicapped. And so they haven't had any, I think they're putting the first 3 new units on since
David?
For a long time.
60-something.
Yeah, they've been up and down.
Yeah, and they also oversee the state voucher programs, which don't necessarily fall under affordable housing as being counted
It
towards
makes
the
more-
subsidized housing inventory,
Trailer parks.
because it's a
Could be anything.
mobile voucher, where the only ones you could count from that would be ones that are attached to the construction of funding from that agency
Yes.
for
Indeed,
construction
yes.
of housing. And then you could attach a deed restriction, and it would count towards subsidized housing inventory.
But you're in the same pool or same area of need, right?
Yeah, we address, I think we have a broader group of people that we can address or reach out to. They don't really have a heck of a lot of funding either. You know, I mean, they generate funds from the rent that they collect, which is based on 1/3 of the income of a lot of the residents, and, I mean, that's peanuts per.
Well, and they go after CPC money and things like
Yeah,
that.
they went after 600,000. And you can get, some towns, I think it was Orleans, I can, actually have had a portion of the CPC funds through town meeting designated specifically towards the Affordable Housing Trust Fund of the town, 10% of it each year. So that's another avenue we could seek funding through. And they've done that, they've passed that. And towns have done what I've said, what I'm proposing tonight also. And if you look through the housing production plan, it'll discuss that. And that, I can forward that to you if you'd like. It's like an 87-page read.
I draw the line at 40.
Yeah, you know, you just, you know, I see it as the tax title monies comes into the town. This you kind of know what it's going to be used for. Otherwise, you gets swept into the black hole. It gets distributed to who knows where and when. I think it's a good, it's a good program, and it helps out people, and I think it's part of the responsibility of the town to do that, try to help people who are in need.
I would
So you're
suggest, I'm sorry, go ahead, David. Go ahead.
You're saying 50% would go to the Affordable Housing Trust
Of the net proceeds.
of the net proceeds.
Right.
If the other trusts have been successful in getting CPC to assign 10% of their, whatever they appropriate for that affordable housing, I would suggest you pursue
Well,
that.
that's another fight. You know,
'Cause if you're gonna-
people are
it's a
very
point.
guarded about their funds, and so this is a step we figured we'd take. And there's also administrative funds that we could utilize, possibly from CPC. But, you know, it's, housing isn't cheap, as you know, and, you know, like we have 138 now, but 1 or 2 projects, we're down to 0. And if we ever want to really be a functionable housing trust, we really do need either a consultant that handles the business for us, or a part-time unbenefited person who's maybe retired that knows housing. We're like yourselves. We're a volunteer committee. We try to learn as much as we can, but we don't have the time or the skills to really do what's necessary to make the trust, viable. So that's what we're trying to do, we're trying to work towards that.
Well, you need to function on your own. Don't, the administrative cost would be the last issue.
What are you talking about?
Well, you refer to supporting your administrative costs with the monies that would be from CPC as an example. I would suggest that you want to be focused on a repeat income on a yearly basis to be distributed for the purposes of supporting the affordable housing.
Correct. I mean, it would be, to hire someone of, even unbenefited has some experience, and, it'd be at least $30 an hour.
Well,
If you look, no, I'm just saying, if you look at 12 hours a week or something for someone to be available or to work, or 8 hours a week, it adds up.
Well, it would add up for every committee, Jim, as you profess as that wanting administrative help. There's 30-some committees in this town, all functioning the same as
No,
your
we have a
people.
different function than most other committees.
We're all
because of
trying to
what- no,
perform a
but- No,
function.
because of what our charge is of the committee, and what, under Mass State law, what we're charged to do.
Okay.
And we cannot do our job as a committee without having funding to do it.
Now, do you have any idea, and I'm not being confrontational, just how many of the parcels and tax title we typically do in a year, or an average?
We've only done one in 2 years, that
Yeah.
I remember. The one on Apple Street. Sometimes you might see 2 or 3.
Yeah. I'm just thinking in terms of
Right now,
the-
the monies are pretty good on the tax title properties, as all properties. Are selling at a higher rate, but a lot of times, you don't get a heck of a lot from them.
Yeah, I'm just thinking though, affordable housing, and we have an awful lot of families in Wareham that have difficulty with housing. And if you had something more, constant, you maybe help more.
I agree, and that's the next step.
Yeah.
We're just trying to take a little bite of the apple here, get a little bit there. If we can get constant funding over the 10% through CPC, that will be good. That's part of the plans moving forward. Either that or administrative funding. We've had discussion with Eric Arbeen from Serped. We're talking with, we're gonna have a representative from COG come in, to discuss what they could provide for us, and as consultant in helping the trust, and possibly hire them as a first step to help us out, make us a more functionable group. Otherwise, we might as well just get rid of it.
Well, that's where I'd be right now.
Well, it's all right.
Any other concerns, questions, gentlemen?
Not so much a question, but a comment here. I mean, I understand what you're doing. Let's take a bite of the, taking a bite of the apple here, a bite of the apple there. You should stop taking a bite of the apple and swallow it.
What's
Go
that?
for the funding that you need. Go for the funding sources that you need. I mean, I get where you're coming from here. This is a good idea. It'll help with funding. But if you can do it 10% from the CPC, let's go for it.
Well,
Maybe we should see that on the fall.
maybe we'll see it on the fall.
You know what I mean?
Depending
Because
what the board,
if we can get the
at that.
program funded properly, then we can get it running properly. But we can't do that if we're only relying on something that might happen next year.
No, I agree, but I'll take a little bit of something, than a
Right?
little
Because
bit
I
of
mean, right
nothing.
now, we're not transferring anything to you. You're not receiving any money from this town meeting. Could be 2 years until you see something.
Or it could be 3 times in a year.
Yeah, yeah.
But like I said,
But it's not gonna help you right, it's not gonna help you right now, is what I'm getting at. It'll help you down the line, but it's not gonna help you
Correct, and
now.
that's what we're looking for.
Jim, 50 cents of a buck is better than 50 cents of nothing, So,
But
I see what you're doing.
No, I see it too. I would like to see it go for the entire thing,
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but again, we're trying to work our way through this. We don't want to try to do too much at one time and ask for this, ask for 10% from the CPC. we're trying to do it incremental and, address it one group at a time and see what we can do. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. We'll be back next year. It took me 3 times to get it on the warrant.
Anything else, gentlemen? Norma? No, thank you, Gene.
I'll forward some information to you.
Please.
I think that would help.
Oh, yeah, it's just, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, gentlemen, it's 9 o'clock. I was gonna move on to some voting on some articles, but you may wanna have a discussion during the voting, so that would prolong it. And so I would postpone it till next week. Is that all right with everybody?
Yes.
Good, and we also need some volunteers. All the articles need an explanation as to how we vote, so I'd appreciate some hands go flying up on, okay? Now, it was
If
interesting.
anybody misses the meetings, you own them.
All right.
We don't do that, do we?
I do.
The group today that we're touring the Upper Cape, it was a posted meeting and all, so we could talk official business. And it was discussed that the possibility of bringing the school department back. They've made some more changes. They've got the, not only with the 3% reduction, but of course, they're adding in another 2 million, I think, one with COVID funds, their circuit breaker, as well as a third fund. I can't remember the name of it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but the explanation, what are you gonna do with that money? We never got an explanation. And so, if you like, I'll call them back.
I would like to.
I'd like to.
Excellent.
I'd like to see if they, when they come back to have an updated line item sheet, and not just, numbers off the top of their head to write down.
Indeed, because they've made adjustments and had discussions
Right.
since that
Correct.
time for. I need some suggestions for the report cover. Usually we have an issue of some of the items, and we don't seem to have something in particular. Unless I'm missing it, so by all means, I appreciate input that you have.
I gave you a suggestion. You don't remember, do you?
No,
Have one of the students, maybe in the art
Oh,
class,
yeah,
draw a picture, photography from the high school. I think they'd be pretty happy putting something together and put it on the cover and let them put their name on it. And,
I'll make that call tomorrow.
well, it's just a suggestion.
No,
I put that out there.
I've done that before, up in Stoughton. I had the art students drop it, pictures of people.
Yeah, I mean, kids might see something different than what we see. They might wanna do Wickett's Island. I mean, I'm just throwing things out there. No, I'm just saying,
Yeah,
you don't
but-
know what they.
Caricatures and the like, sure.
No, yeah, let's have the
So a
the
solar
students
panel,
put
there you
something,
go.
put something together to put on the cover. I'm all for that. I like it.
That's an idea. Maybe
No,
a solar
I
panel and a
like
chainsaw.
After all, they are tomorrow.
Whatever it is.
Killing me, Jody.
They are
I'll
tomorrow.
have them do caricatures of the school committee and the selectmen.
Or the finance committee.
Bite your tongue. Article 3 is the compensation of elected officials. That is going to have in our budget that we reviewed, town clerk included her salary.
Right.
Because town meeting had voted that she would be an appointed versus elected.
Correct.
Yes.
Attorney General has not accepted that article as yet, approved it. So she is forced to run for reelection. That's why her name is on the ballot.
Okay.
So she'll be an elected official, compensation of certain officials, and that'll, or move her salary to there, and I'll have to take it out of the town clerk's. She did give us a separate salary line item for her.
She did.
So I have to put it in this, because she's running as, she's still an elected official as far as our charter is concerned. So I just wanted to make you know that change has to show up here. Is here, Claire, just she and Claire appear in that particular article.
All right.
Just making you aware of
She
a
does
change.
have somebody running against her too, so.
Yeah, she
Yes.
does, yeah.
Yes.
So for general information, we're having a candidates night, April 4th,
Hmm.
in the selectmen's room
And there's the
all
ar-
the races.
And there's also an article changing the position back to
Correct.
elected.
Elected, yes.
I'm just chuckling, thinking, the AG will finally come down and say she's gonna be appointed. And then the article is passed in town meeting to be elected. And so she's serving 3 years and appointed, and then,
Be elected again.
I think the Article 3 of the law that governs that one, I think it's appointed as well as elected.
yes.
So she'd be on that regardless. Whether she was appointed or elected, she'd still be on that. Under that article.
I
if I'm
think,
not
as
mistaken.
Leslie mentioned, the vagueness of some of the phraseology, appointed, because all our department heads are appointed.
It says certain appointed officials.
Yeah, okay, thank you. That's the exact.
Words, it's words.
I read it, but I
Words
couldn't.
matter.
They
I
do.
read it, but I couldn't see the words off the top of my head. I don't have it printed out.
Comes with age, Matt.
Yeah, that's fine.
Few of us can tell you about it.
So what's the holdup on the state? Why are they
The
taking
Attorney
so
General
long?
just hasn't accepted the articles yet, or approved it or disapproved it.
Sometimes,
And we
Oh, excuse me,
There-
no,
there's-
I'm wrong. My apologies. It's a home rule petition, so it has to go through the legislature, because it changes our charter.
It's a charter change.
Yeah, the bylaw would go through the AGs. The charter change goes to the floor of the legislature.
Can't we call our representative up and say, what's going on here? Let's go.
She doesn't have control of it, and then
Huh?
we've been in touch. Doesn't have control of it. It's that shadow people you don't know that control everything in the background.
Yeah, it's
And they
It's a
didn't
long
meet for almost
process.
2 years.
it's a
They
long.
were waived having to come into Boston, but they were paid because if they had come into Boston, they would have gotten a certain stipend.
Right.
Don't tell me they were still getting their mileage. Don't even go down that road.
Jane Swift
That's a
was
whole-
in a helicopter company.
Okay, and that's about it, I believe.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Vote.
you gotta run. Good night, everybody.
Next week, same time, same place?
Indeed, the next
I
week.
feel we were just